Well, what do you know? It's your old buddy David. This is quite a day, folks, I have to say. Thank you for being here. The shirt is blue. So for all those who were like taking bets on the color, I guess, blue we kind of figure is probably your safest bet if you want to win money. More often than not, I like to accentuate my baby blue eyes. Well, here we are. This is the maybe the last live stream video that I'm going to do before we do our course, which starts next Sunday. And it's many hours a week. It's very, very exciting. But other than that, the main reason why I want to keep going right now is a series of prophecies that have come in that are incredibly amazing. Let's go over here now. So I want to be clear that if you know me from my work recently in the last few years, you may not be aware that between 1996 and 2000, I generated an enormous amount of intuitive material. Now, I continued to do readings for clients until 2005, but what do I mean by intuitive material? Let's just get clear on that. Ever since I was a kid, I was very interested in psychic ability, ESP, and when I was 7 years old, I began reading How to Make ESP Work For You by Harold Sherman, where he gives exercises on how to be psychic and how to get it to work. And I started practicing this in second grade with my best friend Eric, and sure enough, I was able to wake him up in the middle of the night, and I added a little extra thing on there to wake up in the middle of the night and think of gold. Well, then the next day, after practicing Sherman's techniques, of course, for telepathic mind transfer, I ended up going into the cafeteria and said, "So Eric, how'd you sleep last night?" And he got all scared. And he said, "Well, I woke up like there was somebody in the room staring at me, and I was very frightened." And I said, "Well, knowing that it was gold was what he was supposed to be looking at next when he wakes up." I said, "Well, what was the first thing you thought of?" He said, "Well, I want to know what time it was." I'm like, "Oh no," he looked at the clock. "Well, how do you tell time?" He said, "Well, I looked at my watch." I said, "What color is your watch?" He said, "Gold." So this was amazing because I told him to wake up in the middle of the night and think of gold, and that's exactly what happened. After this breakthrough, we began doing psychic experiments. We even did a classroom demonstration of ESP with my own form of Zener cards, where every one of them was unique from the others. And as the years went by, going on into high school, I began reading a lot about shamanism. I began reading about indigenous people and their traditions. And then when I got into college, I actually studied all the major religious texts, studied the Bhagavad Gita, studied other Vedas from the Hindu scriptures. I studied a lot of Buddhist texts, the Dhammapada, Buddha's Book of Righteousness, read the Bible. I went through everything I could get my hands on. And also very important to note is that beginning in 1992, I started to write my dreams down. And by early 1993, I started to try to do it every day. And then there was a bit of a lapse, 93, 94. But by 94 is when I really started to write my dreams down every single morning. And as I describe in my new book, Awakening the dreams became very prophetic. And again, I want to make it clear that the beings, if I want to call it that, whoever is out there speaking to us on a benevolent, positive level, I call them the beings just for convenience. I've tried to dispense with any religious terminology for this to make it non-denominational. This dream contact ended up leading to a telepathic verbal contact after I had already been working on my dreams off and on, and then mostly on for 4 years. So November 1996 is when I had already by this point extensively studied remote viewing. This is the 99% accurate protocol for gathering information remotely that the military is already using. And when remote viewing started to come into the fray, what we have is a standardized, scientifically tested and verified, I mean scientific in the sense that it was done by the government, but still that constitutes science, government science. classified government science, which was later declassified, developed these protocols that make you a very good psychic if you practice them, to such an extent that people end up being 99% accurate. Now, I was really into UFOs. I'd had UFO dreams all my life. Art Bell was the big thing, and they're always talking about remote viewing, so it only made sense for me to mess around with these things myself. Well, what I ended up doing was getting a call from a man named Joe Mason, who was on Richard Hoagland's forum, and Hoagland was the biggest name on the Art Bell show at the time. He had the biggest draw. And I was very interested in his work on the face on Mars, hyperdimensional physics. He was the best for that time. He was definitely my favorite. So once I went on to Hoagland's forum and I started to post a lot of articles about synchronicity, I was having very strange synchronicities going on. I'd see a clock. I might not look at the clock for 2 hours, and right as I look at it, it says 3:33, or it says 11:11, or it says 12:12. If this is happening to you, you may notice that it starts to happen more and more often, as if it's becoming more insistent. And even before I got into the telepathic stuff in 1996, from 92 to 96, and even before I started to write my dreams down, synchronicity was already happening to me. I had a very, very major 333 experience when I walked home one night and was looking, one afternoon actually, and was looking at the microwave oven's clock. And I had this incredible, almost like an out-of-body experience, like I felt as if I was floating over my own body. And it was very profound. And as I looked at the clock, it said 3:33. And I'm like, what in the world is going on here? You know, what's up with this 3:33? And so many times people are getting these types of things, but they really don't understand exactly how this all really plays out. So even before I started to do the telepathic contact with my own readings, where I was speaking on behalf of some aspect of myself and apparently other beings that's higher in the cosmos than I am, you know, higher than any of us are. Well, this began, you know, with trying to figure out what am I going to do with these dreams and all this stuff about UFOs, and I wanted to have contact with extraterrestrials. I mean, that was one of my things. It's like, okay, well, you know what? If Roswell is real, if stuff crashed here, let's go over here now. If Roswell is real and stuff crashed here, I want to know, like, what's going on. I want to know, you know, if we got the technology, what are we doing with it? Why haven't we actually released this hover car stuff to the world if they have it on the inside, you know? And so it was a very frustrating thing for me because remember that the deep state's strategy on UFOs was to instill so much ostracism that you don't want to be a UFO believer because your friends might kick you out of the social circle that you're in. They really, really did not want you to feel good about being a UFO enthusiast. They wanted you to feel like you were lower than human scum. And it's interesting because I will sometimes start up a conversation with baby boomers, you know, in the demographic of like 65 plus years of age. And these are just random people. And when I start to try to talk to some of them about UFOs, they go, oh, I'm not interested in that at all. That doesn't interest me. And I'm like, wait a minute. Of course you're interested in UFOs. How could you not be interested in the idea that we're not alone in the universe? And then how could you not be interested in the idea that obviously whoever is visiting us is more advanced than we are? And you know what I like to do? I like to meet people who know more than I do and pick their brain. Why not meet extraterrestrials, pick their brain? Their technology could be 2,000, 5,000, 20,000 years ahead of ours. And if we can start talking to them, then we can make a quantum leap in technology very, very quickly. And when you start to delve into the books the way I do, I read 300 books on UFOs and the paranormal when I was in college. And pretty quickly when you start reading these books, you discover that there's actually an avalanche of data. There's almost too much data. Where do you begin? How many times have people seen massive UFO sightings? I mean, I started to get tired of this after a while. I started to get tired of reading sighting reports because there's just so many of them. And you even have some really strange stuff in the 1950s where big cigar-shaped motherships were showing up and lots of little scout ships start to pop out. Like in France, there was a whole bunch of these kind of things. So you have these UFO flaps where a whole bunch of people see things and then books get written about them. Well, another thing that many books talked about was Majestic 12, that there was a group that started after the Roswell crash, and it was called Majesty 12 or Majestic 12. And the idea was that this was a top secret group within the U.S. who had been chartered to try to understand what was going on with the extraterrestrial presence. In this upcoming course with Ben, one of the things he brings out is a quote from Flying Saucers Top Secret by Edward Ruppelt. Or I think Ruppelt might be the guy that was interviewed in the book and not the author. Yeah, the author's James Kehoe, I believe. So anyway, Ruppelt was the guy who was responsible for Blue Book. He was responsible for the whole cover-up. So one of the things that we do in the new course, the disclosure, is we actually talk about the fact that, and we read the quote, that the guy who was hired to do the UFO cover-up came clean. Edward Ruppelt, he came clean. He lied, and he admitted it. So you'll be blown away when you see that part. And again, what I'm trying to say is, we also have a quote in there from 1948, which was I believe it was the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, if memory serves, or Chief Officer something or other. But anyway, Chief Intelligence Officer is what I think it was. And he came forward in 1948 and said that flying saucers are interplanetary. So there was an official government announcement that these are real before the Ruppelt Blue Book thing covered it up. And even the guy who's notorious for swamp gas came forward later on and admitted that all of that stuff he was told to say was a cover-up. Well, we've gotten the real disclosure now. We've gotten the information that we need, and that's one of the things that I don't think everybody realizes yet. We may never get more from the military than what we've already seen. I mean, it's possible. I think there's going to be a point where they will have to acknowledge, sorry about my runny nose, you never know what's going to happen when you're live, right? You got to pick your nose. It's live. Sorry that my nose is running. You know, it's really unpleasant. It's like liquid running down the side of my nose. There, I got it. Okay. All right, we'll edit that part out. So I'm trying to just get right to the point here, no hyperbole, no fat in this discussion, by saying, look, it's always been covered up. And when you actually do the due diligence and you read all this stuff, it's very, very easy to see that. It's very easy if you read 300 books on UFOs from the library in the 1990s like I did. Look, I got tired of it. There was certain data that was so good and so relevant that many authors used it in their books. And so after a while, I started to get really frustrated. And it's like, well, is there any book that I can read that's going to tell me something I didn't already know? I'd been through tons of stuff on India and the fact that the Vedic scriptures describe them using flying craft called vimanas, that the vimanas appeared to have no sound except for maybe a pleasant humming noise. They could fly through mountains, they levitated, and they had some kind of particle beam weapons. The Vedas also describe them being at war with reptilians that they call Rakshasas or snakes. And these are entities that have names, but obviously have a reptiloid appearance of some kind. So imagine what it's like to be spending every moment of every day reading about this stuff when you're trying to, pass college. And that's what I was doing. I managed to get good grades, but the majority of all my time was spent on research. I literally would have as many as 5 books that I was reading simultaneously. I wouldn't even usually use bookmarks. I'd just leave them open face down, which I know is a bad idea, but that's what I was doing. And I just binged on this information. So by the time I got out of college, I continued researching more after college, but it was starting to get frustrating because just to find a book that had information that they hadn't already seen was amazing. Well, then Graham Hancock in 1996, somewhere in the summer, comes out with Fingerprints of the Gods. At least that's when I saw it at the bookstore. And I was amazed because many references that I would consider to be the best pieces of data from these 300 plus books I'd read, many of them were in Graham Hancock's book. And he made a compelling argument that we had Atlantis all wrong, and Atlantis is Antarctica. And he brought in things like a book by Rand and Rose Flemath called When the Sky Fell, which by itself is an amazing book, and I bought that book, showing every culture all over the world has these wonderful, well, not really wonderful, they're terrifying, myths of a flood, like some catastrophic thing. And I mean, the Native Americans have it all over the place. Mesoamerica, South America, it's through Europe. I mean, you name it. When you read Rand and Rose Flemath's book, When the Sky Fell, holy crap. And it becomes very obvious that Antarctica is Atlantis and that the Earth must have shifted on its axis to account for this. Then you get into Charles Hapgood's theory of Earth crustal displacement, right? That the outside of the Earth can slip over the magma like as if the peel on an orange could slide over the fruit inside. Okay, same concept. So that was all in that book. And again, the idea of Atlantis being Antarctica was very, very fascinating. And as the years went by and I began to meet insiders, one of my first insiders was the man we call Daniel typically. Now we know his real name is Bruce Perrett. And I couldn't have given out his name until he actually passed away. He never wanted to come forward. It's actually very, very amazing that we have a new insider coming forward in the disclosure. I mean, like, I didn't know if anybody was ever going to come forward again just based on how oppressive it is and how difficult it is to be a whistleblower in today's world. All right. So to try to zero in on this and not just spend a huge amount of time going through older material, as I continued to read all these books and try to understand the true scope and depth of what there is to know, it just became more and more of a rabbit hole. It got deeper and deeper. It got more and more fascinating. And at a certain point, after all of this seeking and after all of this time, I said to myself, what the hell am I doing here? Like, why am I so obsessed with this? Why can I not stop? Why am I just constantly reading these books? And why is this phenomenon not any more personal? In other words, it's all in books. It's all out there. It's stuff that I'm reading. It's other people writing about things, but I haven't seen a UFO. I haven't had a being appear in my room. I haven't been abducted as far as I could tell. I mean, I had some strange things that made me think maybe that had happened, which I talk about in my third book, The Ascension Mysteries, but I couldn't understand why I was so obsessed with this, why I couldn't stop reading these books, why I would spend every last dollar that I had on information. You know, I didn't go out to eat, I didn't have friends, I didn't go on vacations. If I had money, I bought UFO research, and that's it. That's all I did. Well, this was a long-term process of kind of figuring out, why am I asking this question about contacting the UFO phenomenon? And why am I having all these dreams where I'm interacting with extraterrestrials? So this goes on through 93, 94, and 95. And it was really at the tail end of 1995 that I went to my friend's house, my best friend from high school named Jude, and we tried to do automatic writing. And the question actually was, am I an extraterrestrial soul? Now, why did I ask that question? After I'd been doing all this research for all these years, I read this book that I found in the bookstore by Dr. Scott Mandelker. So the fact that he had a PhD already made me feel confident that he wasn't a total crackpot. But the heading on the book was From Elsewhere, the Subculture of Those Who Claim to Be of Non-Earthly Origins. And I literally laughed out loud when I read this title because there's no extraterrestrials on Earth. This is ridiculous. And his premise was that there's people who look normal, they look like everybody else, but they are essentially normal, but their soul is not. Their soul is more advanced than the average human being's soul by a significant amount. And to cut to the chase, I opened up to Appendix 2 in the back of the book, because I always look at the end and I look to see how many pages of references they have. If there's more than 5 pages, it means they did a lot of research. If there's no references, you know it's just a lot of opinion, and I don't usually buy those books. So I flipped to the back, I found Appendix 2, and there's this list of 12 questions says if you can answer these things about yourself, then you might be an extraterrestrial soul. Well, I didn't even know what an extraterrestrial soul really was, but then I read these questions, and it's the most psychologically invasive portfolio of my own inner psychological issues that even my parents couldn't have put it together because I wasn't talking to most people about this, including my parents. I mean, they might have been able to guess some of them, but probably not all of them. The severe alienation, the sense that you're very naive, you're easily betrayed, you're easily manipulated, you think everybody's going to be good, you're horrified when you realize that people can be negative. And now when I look back on my notes from this time in my life, I realize that I really had no boundaries at all. I was not really interested in anything except people-pleasing, which is one of these artifacts of codependency. Codependency is an addiction to relationships with others. And usually it's one relationship. It's usually a romantic relationship, but you could be codependent on your parents, you could be codependent on your boss, on your best friend or another friend, doesn't matter. Now, codependent is a word that is usually levied along the same lines as alcoholic, and I would actually say that's true. I think that, in fact, for me, whatever issues I may have had with substance abuse in my past, because I did abuse alcohol to some degree in my past, I did do some binge drinking in college and whatnot. For me, the disease, if you want to call it that, the disorder of codependency was way more debilitating than anything that happened from substances. And what would happen is that people would get into my life and they would want to control me almost immediately. They would get into my life and very quickly they would start saying things that were intended to diminish my self-confidence, to make me feel bad about myself, to make me feel uncertain, and then to look to them for approval and guidance. They want to create a fixation. They want to create a dependency where you're saying, I just don't have what I need in myself. I need this other person to complete me. I need this other person to make me feel whole. One of the greatest disservices that was done to me by cabal-oriented mainstream media and mainstream entertainment media was the sheer volume of pop songs and rock songs and all other songs on the radio and themes in movies as well. And you got to remember, a song is a very small number of words, okay? There's not a lot of data in a song. And really, it's not so much about the words, it's about the chords, it's about the melody, it's about the way that it sounds. The words can accentuate that, but you could have great lyrics in a terrible song. Nobody's ever going to listen to it. What really makes a song work, to me, is the way that it sounds. And the lyrics will only help to catapult that process. So, as far as how I have been through my own awakening on this, I realized that these songs programmed my mind in a maladaptive way that probably was intentional. So just like they programmed us to think that UFOs are fake and that anybody who believes them is worthy of ridicule, and I mean, we're talking about decades and decades of television shows that I grew up in this era, so I watched them, in which anybody who was a UFO believer was literally like a knuckle-dragging, drooling Neanderthal. I mean, that's the way they would portray you. You know, you're not a good person. You're not trustworthy. You're a kook. You're ignorant. You probably, didn't get enough education, and therefore you're believing in these stupid things. Well, when you start to realize after reading these 300 books how big the UFO cover-up is, you start to realize, this is looking like something very interesting that they don't want us to see. They don't want us to pay attention to this, whoever they is, or whoever they are. I said that before, right? So the songs tell you that if you fall in love, that's it. And it was interesting because I worked on a play for this one repertory company in Woodstock, and the play was about the woman who wrote the song Going to the Chapel of Love. I had a job working at a pizzeria in my local college town, and they always played the 1950s oldies. So and I was there for 8 hours a day. So I heard the same songs over and over and over again. And I remember listening to the song Chapel of Love and thinking, this is actually really sinister. We're going to the chapel and we're going to get married and we'll never be lonely anymore. And you hear this thousands of times and you think that if you get married that you're just going to be happy and you're never going to be lonely anymore. Whoa! What was so cool was that I got to be in this play about her where it totally destroys this illusion that that was a good idea. Getting married, in her case, was a good idea. And so you find out what happens in her life. So another strange thing is the degree to which idolatry has taken place in our culture. And the beings in these readings that I ended up getting would talk about Elvis Marilyn syndrome. These are two names of people in the traditional celebrity era, at the beginning of the traditional celebrity era, where you say their name, your first name, and you know who it is. And there's a few others like that. Madonna, Michael, I don't know. But definitely Elvis and Marilyn, you know that it's Marilyn and you know that it's Elvis. And nobody else is even going to try to work the name Marilyn too much. But I mean, there was Marilyn Mansfield or something, or Jane Mansfield, right? I'm not even remembering this. But anyway, she looked like Marilyn Monroe, right? So she was working that angle. But I mean, you know when you say Marilyn that it's Marilyn. And you know when you say Elvis that it's Elvis. We're all trained that we want this lifestyle. We want this to happen. We want to be these people. But guess what? Elvis drank himself to death, and Marilyn essentially drugged herself to death. And it's very, very sad to note that these two individuals, male and female respectively, reached what we're constantly being told is supposed to be the pinnacle of achievement in the human realm. To be lauded on television, on films, on radio, that everybody knows who you are and supposedly everybody loves you. This is the power that Hollywood once had. It's definitely not there right now. It's just the opposite. Now they're seen with great derision and scorn. And in some senses, that's sad because I actually like to watch movies and now there's hardly any new movies coming out. The whole thing just kind of collapsed. And it's more about like long-form television and that kind of stuff now as far as entertainment content. So when I look at how brainwashed we've been and how often we are taught to believe that being in a relationship is somehow going to make us happy and that somehow we're never going to be lonely and we're never going to feel sad, that's not what my experience was. My experience was that relationships were the beginning of the learning through trauma, through pain, through suffering. If you're going to have a relationship with someone, you have to give up a lot more than you want to give up. You cannot continue to act the way you did before, at least if you want to be on the positive path. So the Law of One, which is again a source of revealed teachings that I've very greatly talked about throughout the scope of my work, the Law of One consistently reminds us that there's two choices that we have to make. There's a choice to help other people, to love them, to forgive them, to boost them up, to try to make their lives the happiest that it could be. And then there's a service to self path. Now, service to self doesn't mean that you can't help yourself. It doesn't mean you can't love yourself. You should. And it doesn't mean you can't take care of yourself. You absolutely need to. Service to self is 3 words that were used by this weird set of teachings we'll get into in a second to describe negativity, to describe the path of manipulation and control, to manipulate and control others for the benefit and the betterment of the self at their expense. That's really what it's about. So wouldn't you know that my life has trained me in understanding these people by having an endless succession of this type of behavior appearing in my life. And for many, many years, I was very naive. I assumed that people were telling me the truth. I assumed that they were being honest. I assumed that if they showed up as a person who claimed that I could trust them, that was true. And I had many, many horrifying betrayals that just totally caught me off guard. And I had no idea that that was going to happen. And many, many cases of people who got into my life. And really, if you really want to boil it all down, they were feeding on me. They were feeding on constantly keeping me upset, traumatized, sad, depressed, angry, irritable, nervous. You never know what they're going to say. You never know what they're going to do. You never know whether they're having a good day. You never know if one argument is going to spiral off the rails and turn into shouting and objects being thrown. And, this was my life. I mean, I grew up, with being bullied extensively in school. I've been, as I said the other day, I've been tortured my whole life, more or less. But I always had this very positive view of others, even when they were doing these things. And that took many, many years. I had to learn the old Oprah-ism. If someone shows you who they are, please believe them, Or when someone shows you who they are, believe them is another way to say it. So as my relationships with other people in the physical world started to fail, codependent patterns would develop. And codependency is really where both people are treating each other maladaptively and both people are getting needs met from the other person that probably, if you were more healthy, you wouldn't have those needs and they wouldn't be needs. So a typical codependent relationship is victim and perpetrator. Victim and perpetrator means that there's going to be one person who is getting a payoff from being the victim. They actually claim in their conscious mind that they hate being attacked, that they hate being oppressed, they hate having this person coming after them, they hate dealing with this situation. However, if they didn't get a payoff, they wouldn't be involved, right? So there is something that you get back from a codependent relationship, no matter how bad it is. And this gets into the subject I talked about in my third book, repetition compulsion. I forget the name of the guy who discovered this. He's a psychologist. Essentially, what he found was that when you are traumatized, that your body releases morphine-type chemicals, and you get high. So I want to be very, very clear on this. If you are the victim, you get high from being the victim. You are addicted to it. You are chemically addicted to it because it changes the way your neurotransmitters are functioning. Why would anybody, what possible payoff, David, could I have from being the victim, from being subject to a perpetrator? What possible good could I get out of life from being victimized? I'll go right up in your face on this one. We'll go in the close shot. What I'm saying is that when you are the victim, there is a payoff because scientific research has now determined that when you are traumatized the same way as you were before, your body understands this trauma. Your body says, oh, we know this. We don't want anything to do with this. Let's give you a bunch of morphine so that you can deal with this very traumatic thing. So if your trauma growing up was that you were always getting, harassed and yelled at, then guess what? You're going to get harassed and yelled at, and when you do, you're going to get high. When somebody's actually yelling at you, you have a morphine response. Your body is releasing this to protect you. So don't think for a minute that you don't get a payoff off of being a victim. And please don't think, well, David's talking about somebody else. He's not talking about me. Yeah, I am. I'm not talking about somebody else. I'm talking about you. Because everybody does this. And now let me get you a big one here. What if the entirety of life on Earth has been a perpetrator-victim relationship? What if the whole entire basis of our existence on Earth is a codependent entanglement with the elite? That's exactly what's going on. It's a maladaptive relationship where we have a perpetrator, i.e. the deep state, where we have a victim, i.e. everyone else on Earth. And we wouldn't be doing this if we didn't like it. We wouldn't let these people keep going if we didn't get a payoff from it, if we weren't getting high from it. Right? They give us entertainment. They give us movies. They give us this music that tells us that when we get married, that all of a sudden everything's better. It's not true. It's when you begin to do work on yourself when you get into a relationship. It's when you realize that you're going to lose the love that you wanted so desperately if you don't make these changes, and that your partner is saying, I need you to change these things or I'm gone. And then making those changes becomes a very difficult psychological growing up process for you. Well, that's spiritual growth. I mean, that's what we're here for. We're here to push through the hardest things that we most don't want to look at, the things that are the most annoying, the most difficult, the most irritable. That's what you got to do. So we have a victim-perpetrator relationship with the elite, and at least up until recently, with this great new thing that's been going on the last year or so, people would rather actually worship the enemy than interact with the enemy in a proactive way. And what do I mean worship the enemy? If you ascribe supernatural powers to the Illuminati, to the cabal, to the deep state, whatever you want to call it, if you think that they have some kind of weird evil superpowers that you don't have, that's incorrect. What they do have is a very adept method of understanding the power of our collective consciousness and how that collective consciousness can be harnessed so that we end up creating the things they want to see. If they can plant ideas in our minds with media, then we go out there and behave the way they want, and we don't realize that our behavior serves the needs of those in power. But what we're doing is we have this relationship where we are the victim, there is a perpetrator, and a lot of times when we go into this modality, we're remembering traumatic experiences from childhood. So what I will also venture to argue here is that when you go into this victim mode, there is a projection onto your perpetrator. There is something about your perpetrator that is essentially parental, okay? Most of the people who are in codependent relationships grew up in a situation where they never were allowed to feel good or they couldn't feel good about themselves. And they're constantly seeking the approval of mommy or daddy or both, depending on who was there or whoever the caregivers were. We'll just use mom and dad to keep it easy. But even if you have a stepmom, you still might call her mom. So anyway, if your personality is being defined over and over again by whether you get the approval from someone else, then literally you can end up in a situation where you don't feel safe if you're not getting someone else's approval. You don't feel secure enough. You don't believe that you have the power within yourself without this person, without this relationship. Now, the relationship that's going on that a lot of people are being forced to break right now is an employment relationship. You've been employed, and Lulu's nodding her head. We talked about this before the show. You've been employed. Well, she's employed by me, but that's another story. So if you've been employed and your boss, which is not happening in this case, but your boss is being very abusive, well, you're dependent on your boss. You're dependent on your boss for income. So you decide at some point, I need to take this abuse because I need the money and I have to survive, and adults have to survive. So I guess I got to let this person beat on me. Well, I actually had the benefit after graduating college with a BA in psychology, which you'd think is going to go somewhere, of having 3 years where I did temp jobs. I had jobs that I only went to for one day. They were so horrible. And none of these jobs were very enjoyable. They were all very mundane, clerical type of administrative positions. But so as a result of that, I learned that each workplace is an ecosystem that has many relationships in it that could be established for years. And once you get into that ecosystem, there is definitely a pecking order, and you definitely know where you are in the pecking order. I had people, there was one job that I went to where they had an IQ test, and I scored too high on the IQ test. This has happened before. And they don't even have a way of grading it if you get all the questions right. Well, I actually finished all the questions and they were all correct. The other people in the office got really scared because they're thinking this little dork is going to become our boss. And the whole office basically ganged up on me and framed me and got me fired for totally nonsensical reasons. So this has been an ongoing thing. There's an ecosystem at a job site, and those people did not want me to become their boss. And they didn't like how smart I was, so they said, we better get rid of him because he's going to go way up the ladder. Nobody's ever scored this well on our test before. So again, if the choice is between life and freedom and health and happiness versus going into some temporary unemployment, which I think everybody's going to have some variant of this in their lives, it's probably not as bad as you think. There's probably going to be some type of free food that will be available to people as things really get nasty. Or there will be at least some type of bartering economy, trading economy. I believe that even if the economy gets really squirrely for a little while, which the time loop is saying is going to happen, I wouldn't worry too much about this. I do believe that we are all here to be spiritual warriors, and this is the culmination. We are in the culmination. It's happening now. The ascension process actually has a lot more to do with developing healthy boundaries and learning to defend ourselves from attacks than we may have thought. So, as we go on through this discussion, the reason why I'm unpacking all this for you is that I do think the addiction of codependency is widely unacknowledged at this time. I think most people are not aware of how much they suffer from this and of how much we as a planet suffer from this. Because if you think about it, many people even now are emotionally dependent upon the abuser. Even though MSM numbers are dropping all the time, there's still nearly 1 million people throughout the day watching these networks like CNN, you know? So if you have trauma within yourself that you haven't really healed, if you have people who abused you when you were a child, and you haven't really gotten into the forgiveness, you haven't really learned how to forgive those people, then what will happen is that until you learn to forgive those people, you're going to keep attracting new abusers who behave the same way as the other abusers did. This is mathematically inevitable. And we are living in a spiritual reality. Most of us don't realize this, but the reality is much greater than the physical five senses can tell us exists. And ESP is actually, to me, much more than the sixth sense. There's a whole range of multisensory psychic potentials that we all have that we can use. So the synchronicity is one of the things that can break through that wall of conditioning. But I will tell you, it's a very, very difficult thing to stop making other people into God. We make other people into God. We think, and we're programmed by these songs and movies, that if we find the person who we're going to be in a relationship with, that our lives are going to be amazingly happy and that everything's going to be wonderful. That is most decidedly not true. As a counselor who always talked to people about the quality of their relationship, I don't think I ever had somebody who was in a relationship where they could honestly say that everything was cool and they had no problems. You're going to have differences of opinion. You're going to have things that you need to work out. And you may have a totally rigged situation. So when we're looking at things that are totally rigged, and we see this happening on a global scale, these higher beings that I've been in contact with and that appear in the Law of One, what do they always tell us? They say that the collective story is only a hologram of the story of each of us. That we as human beings here on Earth, we have an individual story about where the normal average human being is today. So the normal average human being today, according to the readings and everything I've gotten, the normal average human being has psychological ailments. They are mentally ill. The average person is mentally ill. The average person, you can even talk to a psychologist, right? Any person you can find is going to have at least one mental illness that you can pull out of the DSM, which is the Diagnostic Statistical Manual that they use for psychology assessments. We all have mental health problems. We all have narrow-minded views. We all have jealousy. We all have narcissism. We all have rage. We all have inappropriate depression. We all have lack of self-confidence. We all have an inability to varying degrees to believe that we have the power and the strength to rely upon ourselves. We can rely upon ourselves. We can trust ourselves. We can make the right decisions. We can make good decisions that benefit us. We have enough knowledge to know that when we make a decision, we're making the best decision with all the information in front of us. And we also know that we are loved. So after doing all this research for many years into ufology, first of all, it became very clear to me that there was a cover-up. My sophomore year of college, I took a class on government conspiracy. Actually, my freshman and sophomore year, I had sociology classes where they told us that Ford Motor Company and Boeing, that they were actually supplying the war material to Hitler. And there was research on this that I've pointed out in other videos. Absolutely proven. They found the receipts, they found the documentation, but the media didn't get behind it, so nobody ever really learned about this. Let me just say that again. World War II is not what you think. Hitler was apparently the illegitimate son of British royalty. So it was just a British plan disguised as a different country, disguised as going to war with Britain. They really weren't at war at all at the higher levels. It was a combined plan where you use both sides and you own both sides so that regardless of which side wins, there's a favorable outcome. Now, I do think that the people behind all this, that their goal was for Hitler to win. I don't think that they preferred the American outcome being the victor, right? I think they wanted it to go differently. And I think maybe there was a plan at one point for it to go that way. Hitler couldn't have had these machines. Germany's a tiny little country. America's huge. So how crazy is it? How treasonous? How insane is it to find out that Americans, like our own, parents and grandparents, right? They were building for the war effort these machines that were then going to attack Americans. It's insane. But that kind of totally twisted madness is actually what the mind of a psychopath is. So the psychopath thing took me many, many years. I didn't realize until I got into an argument with this guy on email in 2003. And that's when I stopped interacting with all my haters, because up until then, from 96 to 2003, ignorantly or not, I actually wrote everybody back who had a negative opinion. So the big secret was if you hate on David, he's going to respond. If you say nice things to David, he probably won't. And I don't want to reinforce that behavior. But that's where I was. So I did write everybody back who hated me, made them realize, you just totally misunderstood this. I never had a problem until 2003 with a particular guy. Hopefully now he's gotten better in his attitude towards me. But I multiple emails back and forth with him, and all he wanted to do is tell me that I was a total loser and a jerk. And not only that, but he actually wrote me threats that he was going to molest me, that he was going to molest me for all eternity. And really, what I discovered was, no, this guy just hates me, and there's absolutely nothing I can ever say to him that's going to make him change his mind. And that moment in my life was huge, because up until then, I had this very naive belief that everyone could be flipped. It's not true. There's some people who are so angry and so bitter, and they have such a crappy life, and he had physical disabilities in his case, so he was a disabled individual. He couldn't use his legs, some people develop this sense that everybody sucks but them. And this is one of the basic characteristics of psychopath. The psychopath typically does not see virtue in others. They believe they're smarter than other people. They believe they're better looking than other people. They believe they're more deserving of everything than other people. And a psychopath is a person who also must abuse. They must create situations where they can abuse someone. They are looking for that person. So if you're out there, like I was, having no boundaries, thinking everybody's nice, thinking that if you fall in love, that it's going to be a great relationship automatically, because that's what Hollywood and music tells you, right? Then you find out, wow, you could actually get romantically involved with someone where truly all they want to do is make you suffer. And you're never going to make it better. You're never going to get them to love you. And if you think that this is the love that you need for the rest of your life, nothing could be further from the truth. So when you're in that kind of a dilemma, now again, when I always say to people things that could awaken you that you're in a dysfunctional relationship, I always say, if you're starting to think that you're in something now that you shouldn't be in, wait 2 weeks and observe. If you think that's the decision you're going to make, hold that decision for 2 weeks before you do anything. Now, please, don't think for a minute that I'm saying that any of this relates to my marriage with Beth. We're getting along just fine. It has nothing to do with it. I'm talking about past experiences I had before. So please don't project that, just for the sake of, because people want to make up stories. So I actually found the right relationship. It took many, many, many years. We didn't get together until we were in our late 40s. But what I'm trying to say is I want the quality of your life to be better. Forget about the quality of my life for a minute. Let's talk about your life. I've been through these over and over again. I've been through situations where it seems impossible to get out. It seems that there is absolutely no way that you could ever exit this relationship without both of you dying. Literally. Okay, I've been in those. I've had those levels of problems. So I look at this whole situation that we see on earth right now as one of those types of relationships. If you actually did end up with somebody who was really, really negative, they may, and I had many clients that were talking to me about this. It's more common than you might believe. A psychopath will make their victim emotionally dependent on them, and the victim is then taught that if you don't have the support, the strength, the financial resources, the guidance, the love of your abuser, that somehow your life sucks, as I said before. It's not true. One of the most important things that the beings keep teaching us through these various revealed teachings is the importance of self-reliance. If you are half a person and you're walking around looking for the other half, you'll find the other half, but guess what? The two of you put together is not going to make one healthy person. It's going to make two unhealthy people. I believe that a relationship shouldn't really be entered into until you don't really need one, which is paradoxical because many people literally run from one dysfunctional relationship to the next, and then the same patterns appear again, and that's what the law of one calls true helplessness. So they've really stressed in my readings here, and we've been going through these over the last few weeks, this telepathic contact that developed with me in 1996. And I know that it can make people very uncomfortable talking about this because, well, spirituality is supposed to be 2,000 years ago in the Bible. Yeah, that's true. And why would you deny the value of a living God? Why would you deny the value of angelos, or angels, that are actually real? And if they're real, then why would they have left? Of course they didn't leave. And why would you think that the last time that we're ever going to hear anything from a higher intelligence is 2,000 years ago? I don't. Now that could get me in a lot of trouble with certain folks, but the bottom line is we have this propensity to want to believe that we have all the answers. And so it's a very common perception in religions that this particular religion has the answer. There's 38,839 denominations of Christianity. Almost 40,000 denominations of Christianity. Many of them decry other Christians and say, well, no, it's our way. The way we figured it out is the right way, and you all are wrong. So even within Christianity, you have this incredible infighting, right? And that's way beyond just the major division of Protestant versus Catholic, which is a big one. I would like you to open up your mind to the possibility that it's all real, okay? Jesus is real. In fact, the law of one says Jesus is the mind of the galaxy. So this wasn't just some random thing that happened. This was a very, very unusual situation where, if you will, the group consciousness of our entire galaxy and all the civilizations and inhabited worlds in this galaxy forms one identity. And that's the law of one. It's this concept that there's a much greater unity in consciousness as we go higher up. So for me, I never had a problem with the idea that spiritual beings still exist, because when I was very young, my mother was reading channeled books by Seth. Through this woman, Jane Roberts, was the instrument. And she read this book called Nature of Personal Reality, where the bottom line, very redundantly repeated, is you create your own reality. And that was Seth's main message. Well, I'm totally down with creating my own reality here, but, it's not as easy as you might think, because in order to create your own reality, you have to undo an enormous amount of programming and hypnotic conditioning. One of the programmings that you got was in school, where you're told that if you possess wrong information, that you're a failure. You have a failing grade. You're an F. You did poorly on the exam. Well, what does poor also mean? It means you don't have money. And if you don't have money, then you have a lousy life. So literally, if you did poorly, it means you're not going to have money. It's a hypnotic thing, right? So if you did poorly on an exam, if the information that you have in your mind is wrong, so you're taught, then you're poor, which means you're not going to have a good life. So in order to have riches and abundance, supposedly, right, you need the approval of others. If you don't want to be poor, you have to go along with what the hive says. Well, this has all become blown up in our face, totally nonsensical, right? It's not true. But yeah, a lot of people feel that if you have information in your mind that you believe, and it's incorrect, that this is shameful. And not only is it shameful, it's potentially something that could cause you to become very, very, very angry. In other words, if someone like me comes along and presents you with information that you didn't already know, you have two choices. You can accept the new information, or you can say, well, I don't like this information. It violates what I feel comfortable with. It violates my own sense of unanimity in my beliefs. Okay, the scientific method is about finding these anomalies and then integrating them into a new model. And that's really where we need to go once we get past the emotional traumatic conditioning, where we want to be a good boy or a good girl, and we want to do what mommy wants, and we want to do what daddy wants. We don't want to make mommy and daddy mad. We better do what mommy and daddy wants. Well, that's what this is, folks. The beings say this over and over and over again, that the relationship that we have with the deep state is a personal relationship. There is a symbolic relationship between two people. And so now I'm looking back and saying, yeah, I had difficult relationships, but part of that was so that I would very thoroughly understand how these people operate, these perpetrators. And I talked about it in the first week's video here, where when you have childhood trauma, it can throw you back into fight or flight, the fight, flight, or freeze. When you're in fight or flight, the only part of your brain that's operating is the reptilian brain, the part in the middle. It's about the size of a walnut. You have a walnut-sized brain. You can't analyze information. You can't think critically. You can't really form your own opinion. In fight or flight, really, you're only making this choice. Are you going to get in the fight? Are you going to run away? Or are you going to freeze and not do anything? And any of these choices take extraordinary energy, mental energy. Even doing the freeze, you're in a state of terror, and your brain is actually very, very active when you're frozen, because you're panicking and you're going through all these thoughts. Your brain is very active when you're getting ready to fight. Your brain is very active when you're getting ready to run away, to flee. But when I say your brain, it's only the core. You can't think clearly. You can't have a long analytical train of thought. So as I said before, having been through relationships like this, and I'm not just talking about romantic, I'm also talking about a lot of other configurations, whether it was employment, I had plenty of those, however it was done, these people would get into my life and they would access me. And what you find out is that they need a daily hit of causing someone else incredible pain. So here's the big thing, okay? Even the most dark cabal perpetrators, first of all, they don't think they're evil. This is very important. They don't believe that what they're doing is wrong. They believe that the earth needs many, many fewer people than we have, and they believe it's their responsibility to deal with it. My belief is that our population numbers will naturally resolve themselves. For example, as we allow countries to develop, they no longer have 9, 10, 11 children as a general rule because those children aren't going to suffer infant mortality, and the people no longer feel like they need to have at least 3 good options on the board of who's going to take care of me when I'm getting older. In a modern society, at least up until recently, you don't need to have a bunch of children. I mean, you could if you want to, but like most people don't, because it's not a survival skill to have children. You don't need that. So as we allow these technologies, these suppressed technologies to come out, it's actually going to reduce population. And then don't forget also that there's many, many more places we could live. The human population can expand. We can go to other worlds. So yes, the way that we're doing things right now with the technology that we have now, the population is unsustainable. But how hypocritical when the powers that were, I've been hearing people say powers that be lately. I wouldn't use that. I'd say powers that were, okay? The powers that were are weaponizing this. They're weaponizing your naivete. They want you to believe that they are good. And because the idea that they are not good is wrong information, you don't want to be ostracized. So up until recently, as this awakening is now kicking off, it was the same thing with the deep state cabal as it was with anything else. Like if you try to talk about this to someone, you get scorned and ridiculed because you have wrong information, because they were programmed by their schools that if you have wrong information that you are a failure and you are poor. And they'll attack because they believe that, well, clearly the mainstream is true. So I think all of us have to, even if you think you've got it down and you think you've mastered this, I would still recommend go deep within and look to see how much of you wants to play follow the leader, how much of you doubts yourself, how much you lack the confidence to believe in the intrinsic goodness of your opinions and your decisions. What choices have you made? What realizations have you come up with? What are you seeing? And even if everybody else around you is telling you that you're wrong, that you're a liar, that you're fraudulent, that you're a con artist, whatever they're going to say, do you have the strength within yourself to hear those voices of derision and still move forward and continue on your hero's quest? Well, this is what I want you to be doing. So we are going through a very important growing up process on Earth where we have had a psychopathic relationship. And again, I like to just use what the beings have done in various guidance I've gotten and boil it down to one relationship between two people. If you look at it from this perspective, if you look at it from the perspective of that there are people who represent the psychopath in the relationship and there are people who represent the victim in the relationship. And that's the two sides, okay? The whole world right now is on the ropes from a psychopathic, aggressive abuser. The whole world right now is learning about the narcissistic sociopath. The whole world is having to deal with someone who doesn't even mind creating contradictions, and if you point out the contradictions, they just bowl you over with aggression. You can find things that are wrong. You can point out that they're lying. You can point out they committed crime. I don't care. They say, I don't care. Whatever. So what's happened to me over the years is that, it seems like my life was on a very intentional timeline. There was a lot of things going on that were intentional. And we're already an hour in, so I'm not going to keep extemporizing on this, but I wanted to do a show for you where I don't have slides. There's a few, but I realized that the slides were getting me locked into place. And so let me talk a little bit more about where that discussion originates. If you've watched the previous shows, and I always assume that you haven't, just in case, but if you've watched the previous shows, then you've seen some very, very amazing prophecies coming through. And I don't use very, very amazing lightly. I mean, I do love euphemisms, but this one is really real, okay? This stuff that has happened is unbelievable. It all started, simple enough, we have this show that we're going to do called The Disclosure. A friend of mine who I've known for 12 years, who is now a close business associate, he and I are now working together to bring him out as a new insider. And this is a very serious situation, okay? None of the other insiders who came forward before were CEOs of corporations. None of the other insiders before who came forward actually knew how to build the secret technology. They talk about the secret technology, they used the secret technology, but did they know how it works? No. Did we ever have a CEO come forward before? No. So we've never had a person who's come forward with this level of intense knowledge. And when I see what we've done for The Disclosure, it's absolutely mind-blowing. I know for a fact that in the future, I think this is going to be seen much more widely. So yes, you have to pay for it now. If you don't want to pay for it now and you wait like a year or something, it's probably going to be free. And that will be done at the right time for the right reasons. Right now, we do definitely need the funding because, as I've been saying, over the last 3 years, I've done these online conferences, about 2 a year, and they cost money. And then what happens is we're taking the money, and I didn't make this public, but I was investing in this company with my insider. Now, why was I doing this? Because we actually know how to build these things. And in all of the years of studying the deep state, the one thing that seems to be the most dangerous is trying to get free energy or anti-gravity out. Like, that's the one thing that, nobody wants to take the risk. And once they started really cracking down on whistleblowers in the Obama administration, we hardly ever saw any more whistleblowers come out. Okay? It's not something people want to do necessarily. It's very dangerous to be a whistleblower. There's a lot of things that come along with it. Well, this is the grandest challenge of all. This is the highest hill to storm. Anti-gravity. Because, remember, Tesla invented it, Keeley invented it, Beefield-Brown effect, Thomas Townsend Brown, he reinvented it. Otis Carr had Tesla's turbine, Ralph Ring came forward with that. John Searle, the Searle effect is another one. I was trying to remember his name the last video when it was talking about the magic squares effect. That's Searle. So what was very, very amazing for me in doing The Disclosure with Ben is how much I learned. And so, given how much I've studied over the years, it's very difficult for me to ever learn anything new. I didn't really know, per se, if there was a relationship between anti-gravity and free energy. Now, what I think we've done, and bear in mind, okay, this is a fun scientific frontier. Just because we can build anti-gravity doesn't mean that we exactly know how it works. There's probably I'm sure they have theoretical physics models on the inside, but I'm not really sure that they've got the model that really explains this stuff. So when I say that we're going to teach you how to do anti-gravity, we'll show you how to do it, but we don't necessarily know why these things work. We just know that they work. But one of the things that's really, really come clear to me is that this is my belief, okay, because we're building a scientific model now that doesn't, I'll go to the tight shot here. All of the models of anti-gravity and free energy, I believe, will ultimately have a common solution. After talking to him throughout this 5-week amazing in-depth thing, I don't know how many hours it's all going to add up to, probably more than 20. We have more than 20 in the recording device that we shot. So it's going to be amazing, and it's going to be like a whole year worth of content. I mean, you got to remember, right? If I was doing a half an hour show a week for the year, there's 52 weeks in a year. Divide 52 by 2, that's 26. So if I did a weekly show every week for the whole year, that's 26 hours. This course is going to be beyond that. So this is the equivalent of doing like a whole year. Now I know a lot of you have said, I don't want to do it, I don't want to do it, I don't want to do it. And that's okay. However, I will point out that we do have fundraising goals that we haven't reached yet. We're under where we wanted to be with the orders. So we do need you, and I do mean you, to step up and participate and be a part of this. This is not fake. So let's talk a little bit about what is going on. I believe that there is a unified explanation for anti-gravity that regardless of how you do it, you're ultimately creating the same thing. And the thing that you're creating is a spherical portal between what we could think of as two neighboring realities. It appears, it's possible, and I don't know if this is true yet, but it's possible based on some Russian scientists like from Terletsky, that gravitation in one realm turns into electromagnetic energy in the other, and that they interpenetrate vice versa one another. It's probably true. I would tend to believe that gravity and electromagnetism are mirroring each other in these parallel realities. Because I've talked before about the Law of One, again, being my source text. In 1996, I started reading this stuff after reading 300 plus books. And here's a source that explains everything I was reading. All this data that I was thinking I had just found out for myself is in this book, and the book goes way, 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 way farther than where I had taken it. I got dropped into this whole new world of philosophy and spirituality where a source is claiming that it is a whole planet worth of people, that they originated on the planet Venus, and some of the latest briefings I've had, apparently they're still there. Okay, some of the people who you talk to in the secret government, in fact, the whole Peterson contingent, says that the Valiant Thor story was real. There's a book that Elizabeth has already read called Stranger at the Pentagon by Dr. Frank Stranges, and that's the accurate story of Valiant Thor. Now, Valiant Thor, according to some of the briefings I've gotten, looked like a human, and there's a couple pictures of him out there, apparently. He came here in a craft, and he tried to offer our government a positive deal. We had to denuclearize. We had to stop creating war. In exchange for that, we'd get all this great stuff. Apparently, the people on the inside have now figured out that the Valiant Thor people are not natively human. They're natively like some kind of energy being, but they can project themselves to appear human. So that's apparently what Valiant Thor was. But apparently, right now, there's a whole huge number of these energy beings living inside the planet Venus. And if they want to, they can look like a human being and talk to us. That sounds really silly, but yet when you talk to people on the inside, they all say this. You know, Valiant Thor was real. And Pete Peterson talked about it, and I was reminded of this recently. So we have so much more to learn. We're so ignorant. We don't know anything. We don't know anything. I mean, I'm blinking my eyes, which is the liar's blink, and I just caught myself doing that because we do know things, okay? It's not that we don't know anything. So I don't want to say something that's not true. But that's a typical euphemism that really means we don't know anywhere near as much as there is to know. There's so much more knowledge available than what we have. There's so much more knowledge available than what we're using. Imagine how frustrated I was looking at all this technology flying around in our skies, beautiful eyewitness reports where you got landing traces on the ground, you got eyewitnesses on the ground, you got radar tracings, you got pilot sightings, and we're still saying none of this is real? Oh, but once the New York Times said that it was real, then it's okay to believe it. Yeah, because I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to have wrong information in my mind. I don't want to be a failure. I don't want to do poorly. It's not worth it. It's not worth it to appease the abuser. And if you appease the abuser, guess what happens? They just keep on being abusive. They don't get better. If you get involved with a genuine psychopath, which I have in the past, it's never going to get better. All they are ever going to do is make you feel bad about yourself, shame you, humiliate you, denigrate you, chop you down, tell you that you're nonsense, tell you that your ideas are nonsense, tell you you're not smart enough, you don't look good enough, you're too fat, you're too ugly, you're too old. That's what they do. And the more that they can get you dependent on them, so that when they abuse you, that they know you won't leave. This is very important. They want to groom you so that you will continue to believe in their authority. So a big part of the personal training that I got beginning in 1996, when my dreams turned into a telepathic relay system where I'm getting words from something using remote viewing protocols, it became very clear that they wanted me to be much more self-reliant than most people are. Most of us live and die by what other people think about us. And if you go out there on the internet and you start trying to make any type of a case about anything, you're going to get haters. It is utterly impossible to do anything good without having haters. If you want to be that milquetoasty person who's just an appeaser and just does what powerful people want, then you're going to spend your entire life licking other people's boots and saying that you're sorry. And that you're sorry that you didn't lick the boots properly. Oh, you missed a spot over there. Okay, I'll get that one too. All right? I don't need you there. I don't want you there. God doesn't want you there, if I may use that term. The Creator doesn't want you there. One of the biggest parts of this training that they've been saying is that the entirety of the creation is within you. You have the full manifest power of the divine within yourself. And what in the world could threaten you if you have the power of God? I'm sorry that I'm going to use this. Some people don't like the word, but given that we have a lot of Christians coming on board, I hope you'll just, in your mind, if I say God, think Creator or whatever term you need to use. Because I'm not trying to constrain anybody with particular religious definition here. That being said, the Law of One makes it very clear that the Jesus manifestation was the manifestation of our galactic consciousness, and that what you would think of as the Father is the universal consciousness of all the galaxies put together. If Jesus tried to explain even the concept of a galaxy to people 2,000 years ago, galaxy? What? They'd have no idea what he's talking about. So the concept that there's many galaxies in the universe, he could say, in my Father's house there are many mansions. Okay, a mansion could be like a galaxy, but again, we don't really know. So let's go over here again. All of this stuff that I'm talking about is building up to a big announcement that I haven't even made yet, okay? And I realized that this is what I needed to do today. We need to talk about the lessons that each of us needs to learn, because another thing that's very significant is you can look at humanity as if it's one person, but then you can look at how enlightened that person is based upon the enlightenment of humanity as a whole. As we become more awake, as we become more aware of what's going on in the universe and what's going on in our own lives, then that awareness creates compassion. When you look at someone who is a perpetrator, what you're seeing is a person who has trauma that is so great in their past that they never got over it. They're always angry. They're always upset. They're always wanting revenge against whoever did this to them before. And because they can't actually forgive the person, they can't actually let go of the trauma, they become compelled to repeat the trauma every day. So the perpetrator is getting a payoff just like the victim. The victim is getting a payoff because other people victimized you in the past, and then you get a morphine response when you get victimized again. I hate to say it, folks, but every time that the DS is traumatizing you, every time they do something new that really upsets you, and there's a whole bunch of it right now, each new outrage gets you a morphine hit. So you're looking at the news, you're addicted to looking at news headlines, because when you read a headline that's very upsetting, you get high. So we all need to realize that chemical substances do not create intoxication. Whether it's alcohol, cannabis, you name it. Well, actually, cannabis does have analogs of neurotransmitters in it. That is true. So that's a little bit different. But in general, we could say that you're not actually, the chemical All the chemicals do to create a sense of intoxication is to stimulate the release of stuff that your body already has. And we don't really see this. We don't understand that when you get into a debilitating substance abuse pattern where you're becoming weaker and weaker, sicker and sicker, more and more tired, more and more exhausted, your life is falling apart, you can't make things work anymore. This is where you need to go to a 12-step group, right? And say, my life has become unmanageable. If you can't manage your life, there are groups out there, people who can help you, and they're going to say, well, you got to lose the substance. Much of what is going on in the world right now is akin to an addiction, a substance abuse type of addiction. Because what did I say before? Codependency is every bit as jarring as being a heroin junkie or a severe alcoholic or a severe gambler or a sex addict. Sex addiction is one of the most dangerous ones, because if you plunder someone sexually, you're also taking on a massive amount of karma. In fact, I had one of the dreams that I saw in here, literally they equated it in the dream to killing someone. You can kill a person by betraying them sexually. If you have sex with someone indiscriminately and they think it's going somewhere and you already knew, I'm not in it, you could cause permanent damage. And the karma on this is huge. So there are certain things that you really can't do if you want to be a spiritual person. I mean, you can, but you're going to suffer tremendously, and it's not really a good survival strategy to get into that kind of karmic depth of trouble. And now that I've been looking back through my own journals a lot more, I realized that I went through very carefully contrived setups to ensure that I wouldn't become a womanizer. And what I was able to see through things like, getting a psychology degree was the incredible trauma that is caused by rape, incest, all this kind of stuff. And the incredible damage that can happen to someone who's been through these very deep traumas. Well, nobody gets traumatized worse than somebody grows up in the cabal. There's even reports of them being traumatized in utero, that they would stick needles into the baby's feet while he's still in the womb. This is what these people do. And then as soon as you get born, as soon as you grow up in this organization, all you know is traumatic ritual abuse. I mean, you're subjected to horrific situations that you have to witness, that you may have to participate in. You get betrayed by your parents. The original whistleblower who went by the pseudonym Savali, wow, man. I mean, I read that stuff back in 2000, and it was so disturbing. Why in the world would your parents put you in a bathtub filled with spiders? Well, because they want to make you broken. They believe that if you're broken, that they can program the pieces, and they can program them differently. Well, it is true that in severe trauma, the part of us that goes into fight or flight, the part of us that only uses that core of our brain, it can actually have amnesia. The more severe the trauma is as a child, the more amnesic you become, which means that you don't even remember everything that happened to you. You have to bring up these repressed memories. And you might go, some people literally don't remember that they were raped until they're 30 years of old age or older. That whole entire time before then, they repressed the memory. And especially in the case of it being a parent, because these things do happen, your mind can't allow you to deal with the fact that your parent violated you, because you still have to interact with them every day. So this gets stuffed away. You don't think about it. You don't even remember that it happened because, well, daddy wouldn't do that. Mommy wouldn't do that. It's probably more often daddy than mommy, but it could be both. It could be either one. It's happened to everybody. I mean, every possible crazy thing that you've ever thought of has happened. That's what you learn when you study psychology. Like the most depraved, whacked out, horrible stuff, yeah, it happens all the time, actually. People getting locked up in chains in somebody else's house, that shit happens. It does. Some kid got freed and the chain and metal had grown into their skin, right? It's horrible, the stuff that we've seen. There's really, really sick people out there, and they don't want you to feel good. They don't want you to feel better. They are right at home when you're angry and sad. They love it. And even though everything in your being is saying, how am I going to get this person to not be mean to me anymore? That's the wrong question. The right question is, when am I going to get wise enough to get the hell away from this person? You know, there's a story about a guru beating somebody over the head with a stick. And every day the guru shows up and bangs him on the head with a stick. And the person just believes, oh, the guru must be, he must know that I need this, right? So I'll just accept the punishment again. Well, he's the guru. He's the spiritual authority, right? Finally, the person just gets so tired of being beat up that he grabs the stick. And the guru says, finally! That's what I was waiting for. You had to get smart enough to realize that I don't need to beat you with this anymore. Okay, the universe does work like that. I've been through an incredible amount of torture, an incredible amount of sadness. I used to brag as a kid. I'm not saying that it's a good thing now, but as a kid, I used to brag. I've cried less than 10 times for emotional reasons. Now it's hundreds and hundreds of times. In fact, one of the things they said in this new time loop I found is that, we all need to really take stock of all the lies that we tell ourselves and all the games that we play and all the ways in which we could do better and we know that we could do better, but we just don't. One thing you have to say about both Elizabeth and me is that we are insane workaholics. We've worked our entire lives to do what we're doing. I mean, how do you get 5 black belts in martial arts? That takes an incredible amount of time, incredible amount of patience. And with me, like 14 hours a day, 7 days a week for 20 plus years of nonstop research. I mean, that's what I did. I was obsessed. I couldn't stop working. I couldn't stop researching. So what has happened, folks, is a very, very exciting thing. And I didn't want to spend 5 hours talking. I'm not going to, not even 4. I want to try to get done actually pretty quickly this week. Because this is the culmination. So just in case, again, you haven't seen this before, I began doing these psychic readings in 1996 where I was using the principles of remote viewing and I was listening for words, which Joe Mason gave me this technique called the dream voice to do that with. And I followed the remote viewing protocols, which means you don't analyze it, you don't understand it, you don't have any emotional reactions to it, you just let yourself speak. And if you get really, really deep into meditation and you let yourself speak, some amazing stuff will happen. And a lot of this is about learning to trust yourself that it's okay to speak. It's okay to speak and have no idea what's going to come out of your mouth. That was a very difficult thing for me because we are conditioned by our society that, well, you can't talk without knowing what you're going to say. Yeah, you can. You can't go on stage and give a lecture in front of an audience without having your notes. No, if you have a piece of paper in front of you and you're trying to lecture with a piece of paper, you suck. The only good way to do a public talk is to not use notes. If you use notes, you're going to suck. I've gotten good at it where I can use slides, and so there's certain things that I know I want to hit. I build it into my slides, but the whole rest of it is improv. I mean, I have a general idea of where I'm going, but it's all improvisational. So as I've been doing these readings over so many years, I've tried to find out, like, okay, why did this happen? What was the greater purpose of this? And there was a lot of really beautiful, eloquent spiritual guidance that came through. And then, as I've said, over the years, I was having these amazing time loops where I would get guided to go back and look at a particular time, let's say 1998, May 1998, for example. And I'm guided to go back and look at that. And then in the transcript, it's describing who I'm interacting with now, their facial features, their appearance, where I live, the geographical area that I live in, what the property looks like, what are the main things that are going on in my life, what are the main things that are going on in the world. And these are staggeringly amazing things that have happened. So I always knew that I had prophecies that had come in the 1990s about the idea that the deep state was going to be defeated, that there was going to be something equivalent to a coup over the military-industrial complex, including its stranglehold over the story of UFOs. Well, I didn't realize at the time that I was being benevolently manipulated into becoming a player in this game, where eventually we would have a company where we're going to try to break this tech embargo and we're going to get you a hover car. We're going to get you free energy. So getting back to that thought again really briefly, what I've now seemed to pick up on again, they know how to build anti-gravity. The patents have already been released by the military, and in the disclosure, we teach you how the patents work. You see pictures from the patents, and we talk about, this how do you create cold plasma, and why does a ship need to have a double hull, that there's an inner hull and then there's a hollow cavity in another hull? You'll learn about how cold plasma is formed inside this hollow cavity and that actually causes anti-gravity, which means apparently there are already aircraft that would look like a normal plane, except that when they turn on this cold plasma, that they levitate off of the deck. It's a vertical takeoff and a vertical landing. Then you fly like a plane, but by creating this cold plasma, you can actually create levitation. Well, Ben started to answer questions for me that, we never had this type of deep geek out on anti-gravity before. We were always saying, well, we'll talk about it later. But in the meantime, we're busy trying to get this stuff actually built. And again, there's no, as far as I know, and I could be wrong, Ben doesn't seem to have one solid, singular, unified field theory that explains why this works. And it's a very strange thing to try to explain because, again, gravity appears to be flowing in from another reality. And it might be that it's electromagnetic over there and it's gravitational here and vice versa. But this other reality is all around us. This is one of the craziest things. You are surrounded by a reality that you cannot enter until and unless you have sufficient massive spiritual capabilities that you could willingly go into that realm, or if you physically die, then your soul goes into that realm. So this is the equivalent of the afterlife, but it's all around us. Apparently there could be people in this parallel reality all around us and you never even see them. And this is apparently happening to us all the time. It's a very interesting meditation to think about the idea that you might be surrounded by benevolent beings and not realize it. So what started to occur to me is, as he was explaining to me this technology, I started to have huge eurekas, and you'll see those in the show, as I realized that, wow, and this is where we go into week 6, where I do a summary follow-up about biological levitation and saints. There's a whole bunch of Catholic saints that levitated. There's many stories of it in the Buddhist tradition. Sufism has levitation happening. It's not as uncommon as you might think. And there are reports about how this works and how to create levitation. So week 6, we're going to focus on that. And we're going to focus on the whole concept of ascension. Because what I discovered was, hey, wait a minute. The ultimate bottom line appears to be creating some kind of spherical, I hope I can say this in a way that's not going to confuse you, because it's very difficult to explain. Creating some kind of spherical envelope or spherical opening between our reality and the other reality, where all of these strange physics things start to happen. So really what it appears to be is that we need to create a ball of energy, an energetic ball. And I'll even share this with you. I was told in a meditation the other day, move the sphere and the body will follow. The reason why most people's attempts at levitation fail is because they don't realize what they have to move. You're not moving your body. Your body is encapsulated inside this sphere, which is kind of representative of like the greater totality of who you are. When the sphere moves, the body must move with the sphere if you set it upright. So that's another very interesting thing that we're going to go through. Now, in the 1990s, I had so many dreams where I could levitate, and I could levitate very easily. And there's hundreds of them. And I have to believe that there's something behind that. In other words, let's just double click for a minute on the big picture of what's really going on here. You can get into this in different ways. The big picture of what's going on here is that there's a security clearance called Cosmic that's 35 levels of need to know above the President of the United States. That's right, 35 levels of need to know above the President of the United States is called Cosmic Clearance. And at that level, Essentially, everyone is interacting with various human-looking and other types of extraterrestrials, maybe even in their own bases. There are joint human extraterrestrial bases that are apparently very old and very advanced and wonderful, where we are invited, we as in the military-industrial complex folks at least, are invited to work with them. The ETs have never really had a problem with certain aspects of our society knowing that they exist and working directly with them face to face. So this was another huge thing that I came up with over the years as a ufologist. Yes, I'd heard about UFOs crashing and bodies being found, and therefore there is a biological component, and these people can die like we do. However, when I used to think about the law of karma as a younger person, and I'd get synchronicity, I would always kind of look at it as some sort of disembodied universal principle. Well, it's just a law, and a law isn't an intelligence. It doesn't have a person doing anything to make that law happen. It's just a law. It works just like gravity or the speed of light or, the sublimation of water into steam or whatever, right? It's just a physics law. No, it turns out that there are flesh and blood beings that are very real, and they have corporeal bodies, and those bodies could die, and they do die eventually, but those people also have incredible spiritual ability to project themselves, to project their consciousness. They don't need to physically go somewhere. They can project their astral body there. As we grow in our spiritual ability, this is going to become far more common and very, very easy for us to do. We simply think about where we want to go, and our spirit body will go to that place. So that was another really big thing for me, was to understand that the law is in existence. The law of karma is in existence, but it is ministered by intelligent people who actually are flesh and blood somewhere. We're probably never going to see them that way, because they're only going to come to us through consciousness means like telepathy. Once you understand that there are intelligences that are guiding your life, then the question becomes, holy crap, if they're guiding my life, then why haven't they been in contact with me directly? Well, they have. And these are called dreams. So dreams are about the most direct message you're ever going to get from spirit. And when you read these readings that I brought through, they speak in the dream lingo. So actually, by reading the readings and understanding the symbolism they're using, it also teaches you how to understand symbology and how to understand a dream. So again, I've had these time loops that have gone on for long, long periods of time, and where 7 years might be, 20 years. Now it's like 21 years, 22 years. It's a 22-year time loop we're in. And in the previous weeks, I would ask again, if you haven't seen them, please go back and watch those shows. The first week, all I did is read off of my website from 2009, where I had prophecies about the defeat of the deep state. And then after this, as I was walking, I became obsessed with this memory that somewhere, I think I had a dream where I was said to be one of the founding fathers of anti-gravity. And this was way back in the day when I was, sleeping in the loft of a barn. So I went back to look for this, as I said before, in the transcripts, and what I found was that this dream did happen somewhere around December 10th, 1999, but I never wrote it down. But I did write down 2 other times later on in January 2000, February 2000, where I refer to this dream, as I showed you in the second show that we did on all this stuff. Once I got that reference, and then I saw December 10th, 1999, then I started reading those words, and that's when I was like, oh my God, I'm in a time loop again. And this time, the time loop is right now, and it's predominantly global. There's tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of references to what's going on now. And it becomes very difficult to talk about, because essentially the stuff that could get you taken off of your platform is the stuff they want us to know. the stuff that is being the most bitterly defended against and banned and taken down, and so that nobody can have this discussion in any of these mainstream forums, yeah, guess what? The worst case scenario that people are worried about right now, well, not really, but the dark aspect of what appears to be happening is true, according to what these folks are saying in the 1990s. But they made the point, using this amazing time loop, that if we didn't have this happen, that everything would be lost. So my understanding of archangels, or whatever you want to call it, is that there are higher intelligences out there, and they have an ecosystem that is so vast in their own way that we can't even understand it. It's so outside of our context. It's like the equivalent of your dog trying to drive the car. Well, okay, Rover, work the stick shift now. Come on, Rover. Turn the wheel. Turn the wheel, Rover. Turn the wheel. Good luck. Good luck getting your dog to drive the car. It's that level of silliness to imagine that we could even understand these higher beings. We could understand the frame of reference that they have, the world that they live in, where they can go through both of these parallel realities that we have, the life and the afterlife realms, if you will, simultaneously. I mean, wow. Maybe I can... Oh, no, I can't. There's this bug that's been flying around. I so want to smash that bug. And it was right there on my light. I'm like, oh. But I missed it. No, David killed something. Oh, no. Okay, sorry. I didn't actually kill him. All right? So look, this has become a very, very interesting thing because, again, week one, all I did is read off of my website and the classic prophecies that I've been seeing for years, which are amazing. We have prophecies of the 2000 election crisis. We have obvious prophecies of what happened in 2001 with the buildings. And then there's all this other stuff that relates to what's going on now. And I've been going through this in detail. They're telling us that whatever this medical treatment is, it's not a good thing. That's in there, okay? They're telling us that obviously everybody's going to become aware of this, which is starting to happen. They also, again, seem to mirror in these time loops some of the things that I've said. They say several times it's not as bad as people are thinking. So they actually talk about the fact that there's going to be treatments for this, and so it's not a guaranteed fatality if you've been through this. It's very, very important because I know there's a whole bunch of people who got shoved into this and really didn't want to do it. And that's an incredibly sad thing. But again, look at the degree to which we worship the negative. Look at the degree to which we worship them with fear, and we believe that they have supernatural ability, including the ability to design something where every single person who takes it is a guaranteed mortality. It's not true. It hasn't happened yet, and it's not going to happen because it won't happen. Will there be a lot more fatalities? Absolutely. But are there ways to protect yourself? Absolutely. Okay? So what happened was I went through the old website article on the first one. Then I get this thing about the father of anti-gravity. Then I go back to December 1999, and then I begin to realize, wow, this actually extends from because I do my journals in chunks. I do 2 journals a month. So on the 15th of the month, I start a new one. So each month has 2 sections. And typically each section can end up swelling to 200 pages because I journal like crazy. This is one of the ways I keep my writing chops up. It's good psychotherapy for me. I document all the information I find online. I document everything that's happening in my life that's relevant, that I want to remember what was going on that day. And I write all my dreams down and any readings that may come in. So the journal is just kind of like a daily catalog of all the stuff that I do. And I highly recommend this practice, by the way. I think it's one of the most expedient methods of spiritual growth that there is to write your own diary. So for me, I just throw everything in there. So then I start to realize, my gosh, it's like everything from November 15th to the end of December 1999, it's time loop after time loop after time loop, and they were mind-blowing. So then in the second video that I did, you'll remember that I went through these from screen captures from the original transcript. Now, almost all of that material was published on my website in 1999. So when you find these amazing inoculation time loops and these amazing medical time loops and stuff that's obviously talking about the current resident, and you can't really say in the White House because I don't think he is. It's becoming very clear now with the sets they're using. The White House apparently has been shut down by the military. They're not allowing him in there because they don't see him as the legitimate guy. And nobody talks about this stuff, right? Well, it's been very, very clear that there is a vast effort in place to arrest the DS, to bring them to stop them from doing what they're doing, which is try to ruin everybody's lives, right? And I got a little bit more on this window, so let's use this window before we run out of cool backdrop here. You see how it's cool like that? You see the trees and everything? That's about to disappear. It's going to turn black, and then this angle isn't so much fun anymore to use. So I'll use it a little bit more right now. So yeah, in the second video, I took screen captures of these excerpts from the readings, but then also I discovered, wow, there's a lot more in there. There's huge, huge, huge amounts of text. So in other words, you have to understand, sometimes one reading that I did would fill an entire 45-minute side of a cassette tape and then more on the other side. I have hundreds and hundreds of pages of this alleged extraterrestrial telepathic communication. So then the next challenge was, okay, well, wow. From November 15th to December, the end of December, I just took the excerpts of the stuff that was the most provocative time loops, of which there was dozens and dozens. If you watch the videos, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Then last week, right before I was going to get started, what I was planning on doing was taking those passages from second half of November and December 1999 and then working up another show where I'd read more of those. But then I went back to the beginning of October in the transcripts from 1999, and it's like, oh my God, October has a time loop in it. And so all I did last week is read the excerpts, the best excerpts from my journal from October 1st through October 15th, 1999. So I got the whole half-month cycle in for that document that I always would make. Each half month is a different document. There was so much stuff that was so amazing between October 1st and 15th, 1999, that took 4.5 hours to get through. And I still didn't use all of it. After I did that show last week, my intent was, well, okay, now I need to see everything between October 15th and November 15th. Well, it turns out that during that time, there was tumultuous stuff going on in my life, tumultuous relationship stuff going on, and as a result, the reception kind of petered out. There's hardly anything interesting and useful between October 15th and November 15th, and then we're right back into the stuff that I already gave you. So when did this actually happen? Okay, I think it started as early as maybe Monday or Tuesday of last week. And this is really mind-blowing because what I have discovered is that I can now definitely trace the time loop of all this stuff that's in my present, where the beings are referring to things in my present right now, and they're referring to all these things in the world with astonishing specificity. And again, all of this stuff was published at one time in 1999. I mean, it's all layered in with my dreams and my personal reflections. It's not user-friendly. It would be very difficult, if not nearly impossible, for somebody to read all this stuff that I put on my website in 99, because there's so much personal information, and it's so long, and it's so detailed, and the dreams are so complicated, and there's so many of them. And then occasionally these readings pop up here and there. What I realized is, okay, holy crap. So I think the next thing that I did is I looked at August of 1999, and then there was all this time loop stuff in August. So then I looked at September, and the months of August and September are massive. The documents themselves are like 200 pages long, and there's enormous readings in there. Look, all the stuff that I've been showing you about spikes and about, inoculations and all the amazing time loops and all the funny little ways that they've done it, It's unbelievable how much more there is than what I've shown you. So this started on, I guess, Monday or Tuesday. And then I was like, oh my God, what if it's just about everything? So since Monday or Tuesday, all I've really been doing is reading these transcripts from 1999 and trying to discern what the heck is going on and how far-reaching is this thing. And I've continued doing this work as quickly as I could right up until this show. So even now, just a couple hours ago, I was reading new stuff, unsealing, that's a good term for it. I unsealed new transcripts because I'm reading this stuff for the first time. I mean, I might remember one or two little lines. Like, for example, the way I would post these on my website is I would find one excerpt from the reading and then I'd use that as the title. So there might be a reading that was called "The Collapse of Society is Not Our Goal," because they said that. There was one that was called "Awaken Now," because they said that. Other than those little lines where I'm like, oh, I remember that. I remember "Awaken Now." I might as well be seeing this for the first time. It's very rare. That's not true. In other cases, if I've worked over certain parts of the readings a bunch of times and I've put it into books or conference talks or whatever, yeah, I've seen that millions of times and I know every word. But there's an enormous amount of stuff in 1999 that was very frustrating because there was all this symbolic languaging and like, that doesn't make sense. And what are they really saying here? What's the metaphor? I don't get the symbolism. So all I can say now, folks, is that I've traced it back to April 1999. I've now been through April 99, May 99, June 99, July 99, August 99, September 99, October 99, November 99, December 99. Every single month has time loops to the present that are going to blow your mind. Every single time loop is... I'm amazed, honestly, with all these medical references and all these injection references that they keep using over and over and over, that I didn't actually piece it together. But again, I just kept generating the content. I wasn't analyzing it. I just kept making it, you see, because the contact was alive. So I'd read it after it came in, but then I'd just keep on going. And I wasn't really going back and reviewing anything because I've been a very, very busy guy. So we had I had to pray on this and I had to seek dreams on this, because what happened was, even if I tried to take 20% of the best one-liners that are the most astonishing future prophecies, even if I tried to take 20% of them and put them into this show, oh, it's 5:55 right now, my local time, isn't that funny? I just look at the clock, there it is. Even if I tried to put them into the show's going to be 10, 15, 20 hours long. There's so much stuff that when I look at what I was able to do already and how long those videos were, which I don't want to do today. I don't want to go 3, 4, 5 hours. I don't. But I want to get this concept out to you first, okay? And the concept is, they wrote a whole book. This has never happened before. Okay, yeah, Seth wrote Seth Speaks and Nature Personal Reality and The Unknown Reality and a couple others, but those were allegedly dictated by one intelligence that worked with Jane Roberts for a long time. But like, Seth wasn't doing these outrageous future prophecies, or at least if he was, I'm not aware of it, beyond certain number of things that are the gee whiz stuff that gets you to want to do this work in the first place. Look, I don't even know how to say this. Michael wrote a book, and I didn't realize this until really the last 3 or 4 days, that there's so much data that has these amazing time loops in it that defy skepticism, that defy any type of rational explanation. I mean, they know what's going on now in 1999. You can go back to archive.org. You can look up ascension2000.com, which was the name of my website back then. You can go look at it at the end of 99, beginning of 2000, and you'll find links on that page to all of these readings. You can read them. You can read the same words. It's just that we didn't understand what they meant because it was a time loop. And so they have these encoded references. So for example, I mean, I can't even begin to tell you how much has happened since I found all this. Because the time loops are not only about the world, it's about myself. And what I now have been led to understand as a result of all this stuff that's come in is that apparently Michael is some kind of group consciousness that multiple people are a part of or are working with or are kind of emissaries of. Michael represents the force that gets things done in the world and take action and clean up the bad guys. Now again, it's just a Catholic archangel. Where did they get this from? Where did they get this from in the first place? Okay, there's something real about archangels. It's not a joke. And we got to remember, the Bible's a living text. Christianity is a living teaching. It's not a dead religion. It's not something that ended 2,000 years ago. Why would you think that celestial beings would disappear and leave us to our own devices and never make any other attempt to show us something cool and to teach us about the universe? Well, that's what the Law of One was. To me, the Law of One is the most high-octane spiritual teaching of modern times. And it all came in between 81 and 83. And there's so much stuff in it that's just so amazing. It's like, where did they get all this from? It's a whole unified philosophy. So I'm happy to announce that in order for me to release this book to you, it is going to have to be a book. So this was our original cover from another slide. The cover has changed since this, so please don't get too attached to this particular design, but it's going to look sort of like this. But here's the deal, everybody. I don't know what the heck to make out of all this, and I really don't know what to do at this point because, again, the time loop has now extended all the way back to April of 1999, so I haven't even looked yet at like March and February and January of 1999. Now, are there going to be more? Yes, there's probably going to be more time loops. So at a certain point, I'm going to have to define boundaries on this so that it'll all fit within one book. But what I'm trying to tell you is that these incredible readings where Michael is speaking with an omniscient knowledge of our present and future in 1999. I mean, absolutely dazzling, undeniable, jaw-dropping stuff. Those are nestled in throughout a theoretically unknown number of pages. I don't know how many pages it's going to be. It could easily be 300, 400 pages long, where the whole book is just Michael's words, and every few sentences he's talking about something that's going on right now, and that's the whole entire book. And I hope it doesn't sound like I'm overselling this, because I'm not. When you see it, you'll understand what I'm saying. So then, remember that in the last two videos, I was like, well, I want to get all of this stuff out. I want to read all of this in the videos. Now I realize it's impossible. This stuff is very time sensitive. They're telling us that, for example, in the time loop, they say that it's probably only going to stay the way it is right now for no more than 2 or 3 months. And then we're going to be into the next phase. It'll be really big and really different. So that came in. They also actually say somewhere that the whole disruptiveness in society where there's problems with the economy is only going to be about 2 years from now, which kind of fits with the solar cycle that I talked about in the first week's show. That at the end of the solar cycle, things calm down and you get peace. And that's somewhere, again, maybe in another year or two, things will calm down just based on that. So, okay, well, this prophecy is amazing, this prophecy is amazing, this prophecy is amazing, but if I do this, it's going to be like a 10-hour video. So they forced me into a corner, folks. The only way I can release this fast enough and not get all of my platform taken down is I have to sell it. Now, in the future, will we sell it? No, probably not. But right for now, the only way you can get this is going to be by becoming a member of our new class, The Disclosure. Because I'm going to write a whole book, I'm going to put it all together, and then I'm going to dictate the whole thing as an audio book. And my goal in this, originally, as I said in previous weeks, my goal was for it only to be the voice of Michael. That there was no analysis, no extemporaneous remarks whatsoever. It's just Michael. However, what I've now tried to do at basically binge reading speed is read through what Michael has told us that he wants this book to be. Because this is the hilarious part, folks, is that he's actually telling me how I should write this book in the time loop. He's giving me notes. He knows I'm going to write the book, and he's telling me how I need to write it. So I had said it was only going to be the words of Michael. Michael came back and told me that in certain cases I need to discuss certain dreams because he does analyze certain dreams. So Michael wants you to know how to learn to recognize dream symbolism. So there are going to be cases in the book, and I didn't want this, okay? But this is where I'm having, I guess you could call it an argument with Michael. This can happen, okay? Michael wants me to include some dreams in this and some of the stuff about dream analysis. So I will try to keep that to a minimum. However, I almost can't get through these without crying because they're so accurate, they're so incredible, and it's so voluminous. The volume is just astonishing. And again, how soon will I get this done? I don't know. I want it out as soon as possible because the prophecies are talking about things that might happen in 2 or 3 weeks. So it just so happens that the entirety of 1999 up until now, we're up to 8 months already. The entirety of 1999 is a prophecy about right now. Everything that they say. I mean, there's some personal readings that they gave me, and I'm going to cut those. And I think in the future, it's like with classic rock, like you can get the master mixtape of yeah, that's the take that he did when he didn't sing the vocal right. This is the alternative version, So I think in the future, we're probably going to go a lot more granular on this. We'll have another set of books that'll end up giving you a lot more detail about these dreams. Maybe more of the personal readings that I don't really think... I think it draws away from the book. And Michael actually said that too. He didn't really want it to be about me. He wants it to be about you. So there's some great personal stuff that I'm going to omit. And part of it is just, how do I keep it to 500 pages or less? Because there's so much stuff. But again, you don't actually need to read the book to understand the bottom line. The bottom line is still visible in the last few videos that we've done. And the bottom line is, this is going to work. Higher beings have allowed our Earth to get into this really crazy dilemma that we're in right now, and they told us in 1999 that they were going to let this happen. They were very specific, and they keep being so specific and so redundant. I'm not familiar with anything else like this in the history of prophecy, except again for the Sibyl of Cumae, but we can't read most of that stuff. So as far as an actually available book where you can look at prophecies and you can analyze them and say, I don't know, there's nothing else like this, and there never has been. It's mind-blowing. Every time I see this stuff, I start crying. Every time I see this stuff and I read some new section, it's giving me very obvious advice about what's going on now. There's hundreds of references to the fact that we're going to be building hover cars in 1999. One dream after another, after another, after another, where I'm on a military base and I'm working on some kind of vehicle, and then it turns out the vehicle can fly. I mean, it's just incredible. And so the bottom line is that I believe the reason why this is happening is to inspire confidence and to let us know that everything is going to be fine. It may seem to be completely impossible for you to imagine that there's a way out of the situation that we're in right now that is anything but negative. It may seem impossible for you to fathom that this global crisis could turn around in our favor because it's not looking good. It's looking very bad. But then when you read what they actually say, they say, no, there's not going to be camps. You're not all going to get herded into this. It's meant to be scary. It's meant to scare you into awakening, but it's not that these things are actually going to be happening. And now, when they are telling me, remember, 1996 through 1999, I was told there was going to be something like an uprising against the deep state and that all of it would be exposed. I didn't have any tangible proof of it back then. And I didn't really see it until 2017 when a certain favorable letter of the alphabet starts talking. Wouldn't you know, there's 17 references all over the place in there. I found like 3 of them. I found, let's see, at least 2 new direct references to September 11th. They're amazing. There's a huge 2-paragraph thing on Mike Lindell. They call him Frank McLaughlin. Frank McLaughlin. And then when I thought about it, I'm like, well, yeah, Mike's network is called Frank, and Mick is like Mike, and Laughlin, the L-I-N at the end, is like Lindell. And then the Loft part could also be pronounced Laugh. And he's a really funny guy. So Frank McLaughlin, Mike Lindell. It's there because it's got the name of his network, it's got the Mick for Mike, and it's got the Lin at the end, which is the beginning of Lindell. By the way, Mike and the others get advice from Archangel Michael. Michael actually gives them some counseling. And one of the things that he said was, I'm going to paraphrase and really, really reduce this, but he said that a lot of the people in this kind of category right now have become addicted to doing public appearances. And so if you have a history with substance abuse, you can also get addicted to public speaking. And I did monthly events for 5 years, and now I'm going to do a lot less than that. So again, it's nothing too bad, but they just wanted to make the point that, you may not need to do so many events as time goes on, and you may get a lot more done if you don't do as many. I certainly know that. When I was doing events all the time, oh my God, I was never home for more than 3 weeks. And when you live on the road, it really gets hard, and your life doesn't have continuity, and you can't get as much done outside of doing those events. You end up basically doing the events and then recovering from the events and not having a whole lot of time. So, I mean, there's so many things that they've shared with me now through the time loop that are personal that I really couldn't even talk about at all, but they're very, very amazing, and it's really enhanced my understandings. So at this point, there is a reference, Michael talking about his sword in April of 1999. So Michael definitely shows up in 1999. Now it's possible, again, that I'm just going to have to arbitrarily stop counting the time loop because I don't know how far back it goes. I've found that it goes all the way back to April. But what I'm getting ready to synergize here, and Michael's given me notes on it, is an entire book of prophecy where everything you're reading is going to be referencing like spikes and all this stuff that makes sense now that didn't make sense back then. I've never seen anything like it. It's totally mind-blowing. And again, in order for me to write this book the right way, I want to analyze the information. Well, in order to analyze the information, I have to commit things to writing that would immediately deplatform this whole thing I'm doing. So the only logical way to do this book now is to hide it behind some kind of paywall, because obviously that's the only way it's going to get out. If I put it out another way, it would be wiped off immediately and you'd never find it. And then I'd lose everything and I wouldn't be able to talk anymore. Because it's that good. It's unbelievably fire, to use a common vernacular. It's fire. This is crazy. You are not going to believe. And then what I end up finding out is, okay, well, yeah, Michael's behind the whole thing. We designed this course called The Disclosure, and Michael wanted to do the extraterrestrial version of disclosure. So you're not only getting the anti-gravity and free energy disclosure, you're also getting the ascension, higher consciousness, how to levitate disclosure. There's a whole thing in here where Michael gives a class on levitation, and I only found it last night. I found it last night. Like, oh my God. I told people in week 6 that we're going to be doing a levitation class, and then Michael comes in and gives you the education. I mean, I am so astonished. And again, it's getting so dark there, we can't use this one anymore. But let's go to this one again. Oh, yeah, that one's good. We haven't used this one in a while. Right here. So, it's so big that it's kind of scary. Every time I look at this stuff, I start crying. There's so much accuracy. But then again, it's very, very clear that Michael wants you to have this information. And so for those who don't want to pay for it, I now feel comfortable and confident that what we've done in the last 3 shows already is totally groundbreaking, totally amazing. Yes, that probably only represents not even 25% of what I've got now, maybe even less than, maybe even 15%, I don't know. All the rest of it is just as amazing. And there's so much that the only way I can get it out is to put it into a book. So I'm sorry I keep belaboring the point. But what I really want to say is that when they do these kind of miracles, which again, the last 2-3 videos are all free, so you can watch them, you can see for yourself that this time loop is undeniable. Well, then that's incredible. Because remember, one of the things they said is if even 10% of you who are reading this feel happy about these changes that are going on in your world, it'll be much easier and faster for us to all get through this positively. So we have a co-creative role in saving our world. And for me, I now have absolute faith that this is not going to be the end of the world, that this is not going to be a disaster, that we are not screwed, that we are not all going to die, that the planet isn't going to blow up, that they're not going to be able to set off some nuke at the last minute when they think they're losing. And no. When you understand the scope of what archangelic interference can be, that they can stop tanks, they can stop jets, they can stop aircraft carriers, they can stop missiles, they can stop bombs, they can stop you from pulling a knife out of its scabbard, they can stop you from pulling the trigger on your gun, the trigger will jam, the gun won't function. All of that stuff is within their capability. They designed this. They designed this whole situation. They allowed the negative to do what it's doing because otherwise we were going to die. They make it very clear in the time loop that we would have lost this entire planet if they hadn't set this up where we can see what's actually going on. And I mean the whole book from the beginning. It's Michael, Archangel Michael is blasting the New World Order. Archangel Michael is talking about the Satanism. It's all there. It's unbelievable. You will not be disappointed. And when you think about the fact that the Cumaean Sibylline texts were considered as valuable as an entire room full of gold by the Roman government itself, I don't even know, you can't put a price on this kind of stuff. And so, again, remember that we're doing this fundraiser specifically so that we can continue bringing out this technology to planet Earth. The funding that we've gotten up until now dumped entirely into the company almost. And now we have to put the fire out. Okay, we don't have enough. So we need more than we have right now. So hopefully you will be helping us with this. And again, I'm very grateful to everyone who already has, but we do need a lot more people to step up. Because getting us to this point with the company, where now the company looks like it's going to be okay, we expended all of our own fuel in the process, financial fuel. Okay, so you do need financial fuel to fight this battle. If somebody is out there on the front lines like this, we do need your help. So there are some questions that were coming up about the course, and I want to talk about those now. So here we go. We're going to go through some slides, and then I think I'm going to let you guys go, because 2.5 hours is enough for me. I want to go do something else. I'm so blown away by this, and I got a lot of work to do. Okay, so here's the first question. And this is what we're trying to do here is basically encapsulate things that lots of different people are saying so that we kind of get it all in one, okay? So the first question, back to the slide, when is the start date for the course? Okay, so it's next Sunday, October 17th. And I have to edit it before we get there, and I have an enormous amount of material. I mean, honestly, if I were to give the entire interview that I did with Ben and then the entire interview that my wife did with Ben for week 1, it could be 8 hours. I don't know. I mean, it's a lot. It could be 7-8 hours. So there's a whole discussion that Ben and I get into with the history of airplanes and stuff that's probably going to be like a special feature. I probably will edit that one down because it's all extemporaneous stuff that we're talking about. And then starting with week 2 and from then on, it's all slides. And there's a lot of slides because as Ben was telling me things, I'm designing slides around it, or he would remind me of something that I already knew, and then I would work it into the show and throw it at him, and he gets amazing responses. So, for example, I get into the work of David Hudson, who had microcluster iridium. And this substance, you heat it up to 850 degrees Celsius, and it disappears. It actually disappears from visible sight, and it loses all of its weight on the scale. Now, how in the world could that happen? Well, in the course, I give a whole outline for why I think this happens. And then Ben kicks in very interesting stuff because, when you get into this exotic technology, it's all about the metamaterials. It's about exotic stuff where you have sacred geometry in the way that atoms and molecules form, and that's called an amorphous metal or a quasi-crystal. So when you go to thedisclosure.com, you look at the website, and you see all this stuff about amorphous metals and quasi-crystals. When I get into week 6 now, I believe I understand why quasi-crystals cause anti-gravity, and I'm going to show you a theoretical model for that, of how I explain it. Because in short, as I was saying before, you have to create this bubble, this spherical bubble, where it's like flowing between two realities, and there's like a fluid-like exchange between them. Now, I believe that this bubble could be created with the right, if you have the proper consciousness. I believe you could create one by chanting and meditating, toning out loud. Maybe you don't even have, just meditating alone might be able to do it. But then when you look at the technology and all the different technological ways and how you could make anti-gravity, I think there's a unified solution, as I've said, and the solution is creating this bubble. Well, Archangel Michael has said, whatever that means, whatever he is, that we will be able to levitate as we go through this global initiation. In other words, right now, planet Earth is letting go of karma. We're all going through a huge, huge karmic alleviation. It will lead to the arrest of the deep state. We are going to find out what they were up to. The time loop makes it incredibly clear that all of this crazy medical stuff that's going on right now, it is all going to be exposed, and everyone on Earth is going to know what they were really up to. Everyone. You're not going to have the luxury of ignorance. That's very much in the time loop. They are so absolutely confident that the cabal will lose, they don't even indicate there's the slightest risk that the cabal might win. There is no risk that the cabal will win. There is none. And, how do you trust a message like this? Well, when they show you that they can predict the future 70, 80, 100, 150 times in a row in 1 year, there you go. That's your proof. So that's the long answer to when is the start date for the course. Okay, next question. How and when is the course delivered, and what can I expect? Okay, so here's what we're going to be doing. Although the first 5 weeks are pre-taped, they will be showing up every week on Sunday. And part of it also is that I have to edit what we shot and just get it to its final stage of presentation. So the only reason I did it this way is I knew that if Ben and I tried to do this live, it would be impossible and we would be attacked. So we're so busy with the company and trying to get our money in place and trying to get the prototypes going and all this kind of stuff that it's been very challenging I didn't even know if we'd be able to do this with Ben. Honestly, I had a whole other way of an idea of how I could do this where he didn't participate. And it was wonderful that he came out here to this studio. We shot it here in the studio, and we got the whole thing done in just a few days. It was an incredible amount of work. But it's very, very amazing. In fact, I think it's probably my finest work. So how and when is the course delivered? It's going to happen every Sunday for 6 weeks. The 6th one, if I can keep it to the Sundays, it will be a live stream. If I can't do it on a Sunday for whatever reason, I'll tell you when it is. But theoretically, it'll be the 6th Sunday that I'll do the live stream where I talk about biological levitation. I'm probably going to quote from the Michael readings on levitation in case you didn't read the book all the way through or listen to it all the way through. But again, this is not facetious. I'm actually saying that in light of everything else these guys are telling us, why would they be wrong about the physics changing, making it much easier for us to levitate? And I will tell you this, the physics change already has made it much easier for me to hear the voice of this higher consciousness. I'm now able to have conversation. I was before, but it's very easy now. I hear things all the time now, and it's easy to tell that it's coming from the right place because I've done it for so long. I can definitely tell which is the real one, which is the fake, any type of intruder voice. And again, they in his book, Michael will teach you how to do this. He will teach you how to get in contact with beings like him. Part of it is him educating you. So I kind of feel a little bit embarrassed because I was thinking about teaching you levitation from just the practical perspective of exercises to levitate in the book, Michael acknowledges those exercises, gives us some new ones, but then he also says, well, let's be honest, levitation is a byproduct of ascension. So if you don't ascend, you're not going to levitate, right? Therefore, you got to get involved in the ascension stuff. Well, as far as I'm concerned, this is treasure troves of new material that we haven't seen before. So Michael showed up to help us explain week 6. So again, another aspect of how is the course delivered. When you sign up for the course, you will get an email that logs you in to a portal where you can watch live if you want to, or you can watch the uploads. So after we do it live, we upload it. Sometimes it doesn't happen immediately. I apologize. We try to make it a Hollywood quality re-upload because I am recording on Hollywood quality equipment here. So I record at a high resolution, and then I knock it down from 350 gigabytes of data down to 4 so that you can watch it. But it looks great. It sounds great. It's Hollywood quality stuff. So you'll get emails, and again, we had a huge surge of emails over the weekend, something like 2,000 emails. So if you haven't gotten a reply quite yet, I was looking at some of your comments. We're getting to them as quick as we can. Next question. How and when will I receive the Michael Prophecies book? Well, I could be a jerk and say, well, wouldn't you like to know? I have no idea. Okay, all I can say is I'm going to do it as fast as I can because some of the prophecy windows are in 2 or 3 weeks, and they make it very clear that it's 2 or 3 weeks. I have no time to write this book, and yet it's all been typed. It's already in a transcript form. So the next step that I'm going to do is to collate all this data together, cut out the personal stuff. I wanted it to just be Michael, but Michael wants you to learn how to understand your dreams, so sometimes we're going to have dreams where Michael explains to you what the dreams mean. There's going to be some of those in there. And I'm going to have certain times where I will annotate the time loops. So the way I decided to handle the time loops is I'm going to footnote the book. Now there's a difference between footnotes and endnotes. Endnotes are like the bibliography at the back, which I can't stand. Have you ever tried to read a book where there's a footnote and you're like, oh, number 18. And then you got to turn to the back. Oh, there's 18. Okay, that's what he meant. And then, okay, now I got to find this page that I was on again. I hate that. I don't want to do that to you. Footnotes are where you actually create a line in the page, and then below that line is the documentation. So you can read it if you want to, or you can skip it if you want to. So I think when the time loops show up that I'm going to annotate them with footnotes on the page. So if you want to see how it predicted the future, you can, because I think that will help increase the awesomeness of this whole thing. I'm going to try to keep those notes as succinct as possible. When I read the book as an audiobook, I'm not going to use the footnotes. So the only way, you're going to have to listen to it, and then you're going to have to read the ebook. And if you want to get into all, okay, well, that's where they predicted da-da-da, that's where they predicted. I'm not going to do that in the audio version because it'll drag it down too much. But honestly, a typical audio book is 25 hours for 500 pages. I don't know how long this book is going to be. All I know is I'm going to do it as quickly as I can. I may end up driving first before I do that, but definitely the first and main priority is to make sure you have a show on Sunday. And once I get done doing that, the very next thing I'm going to work on is getting this book out. I would like to say that I'm going to try to make sure it's done by no later than November 1st, which is 2 weeks away, because it's within the 2-3 week window. And I will make every effort to do that. But again, it's a lot of work to write an entire book. And this is probably going to be a big book. So I'm going to do it as quickly as I can, but I also don't want to sacrifice on quality, while at the same time knowing that some of these prophecies apparently could happen in 2 or 3 weeks. No pressure, right? So that's what's going down. You're going to get I might do the text version first, just for the sake of expediency. I might release the text version before I release the audio, because I have to make the text version to create the audio. So first there will be a text version, then there will be an audio recording. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I think I'll give you the ebook version in text first. Then we'll do the reading, hopefully soon afterwards, where I dictate it all. And that in and of itself is going to be massive. I mean, I would expect that just reading it all could take 15, 20 hours, honestly. And I think almost everybody who listens to this is going to cry because it's so amazing, it's so mind-expanding, and now there's so much more than I thought we had. Holy crap. I mean, wow. And they're telling me actually that this is like the big thing I need to do in this life, that once I've done this, I'm kind of good, go have fun. And if you want to do more, you can, but this is the big thing that you needed to be here for. Wow. This, and of course, getting the hover cars going, getting the technology launched, which again, we took the money that you gave us and we paid for this stuff to happen. And Michael always stresses the importance of us solving our own problems and not expecting benevolent ETs to do it for us. Okay, how will my life and Earth improve with this course? Maybe that was a typo from the autocorrect or dictation. How will my life on Earth improve? That might be what they were saying. But how will my life and Earth improve? We can answer it both ways, okay? First of all, Ben and I don't just talk about advanced technology. You cannot begin to understand how amazing it is when you get a real insider who's worked in these classified programs, who's been there and done that. All of the unusual and amazing stuff that comes out of his mouth, it's, I wouldn't have thought of that. We talk about giants, we talk about pyramids, we talk about Atlantis, we talk about the Philadelphia experiment, we talk about teleportation, we talk about anti-gravity, we talk about free energy. I mean, it's just incredible. There's so much stuff. And so how will that improve your life? Well, part of what you're doing is you're getting to be in on the Wright brothers phase before they got the first prototype. If this works, and again, with Michael coming in and giving me all these time loops, I mean, I've never seen anything levitate. I've never actually seen anti-gravity yet. But I have every reason to believe that it will work. And when you watch the show, you will too, because it's going to be explained to you. You're going to understand how it works. So for people who like the left brain stuff, this is going to be great. And I have two different audiences. I kind of have like the science audience and the ascension audience, and hopefully they merge to varying degrees. The ascension part is now in the form of this book that is so incredible that I got to get it out within 2 or 3 weeks because that's the prophecies that they're talking about. That's how fast they're coming. Between Michael prophecies and week 6 of our course, I think you're going to get all the ascension you could ever want. Because this book is too intense to put out online. If I did, I would lose my career. Okay? It's very obvious because I'm going to talk about what these things mean. And I'm going to speak frankly in the book. So if an archangelic consciousness is talking in 1999 to you about your life and about how you need to ascend and what your stumbling blocks are and what you need to learn to get through this, and that levitation will be part of the byproduct of putting these teachings into practice, yeah, that's going to improve your life very dramatically. Okay, so next question. And although none of this would mean anything to any of you out there, this is slide number 3,333, because I keep all my slides in one big file. That's amazing. It's a quadruple 3 synchronicity there. Okay, so the question is, back to the slide, what is the Hawaii planet? Well, I'm not going to say exactly how I know this, but let's just say that different insiders from the Pete Peterson side of things have shared with me that there is a super Earth. So it's much larger than our Earth, and it's only 7 light years away. So once we get warp drive capability, that's very easy to go that distance. Okay, it doesn't take very long. And by the way, our initiative is warp drive by 2035. So we're hoping that by having the knowledge of what's out there and then knowing that we have to reinvent things because certain things are patented, and even if the patent is not public, you can't infringe the patent. So part of the challenge that we have as a company is that we have to slightly reinvent the way these things work in order to make a uniquely patentable idea. We can't use something that's exactly the same as the way it's done on a classified patent, even if nobody's ever going to see that. So for that reason, warp drive is one of the things that we have a good idea of how to reinvent it, but we're gonna need a little more time on that one. Once we have warp drive capability, it will be easy to get to this in other worlds. Now, people who have been to this planet report that there are beings there who are human-looking, but they're different types of human, so they might have a different skin color than ours. They might be shorter, they might be taller, but they're always going to be a lot more spiritual. So apparently, this is a very close planet to us. So once you get this type of technology, it's very easy to visit. And it's like a resort planet. The whole planet is like Hawaii. It's got accommodations. It's got cool people to hang out with. And it's absolutely amazing. So if you buy this course, you're getting us $333 closer to the Hawaii planet, okay? Sometimes I got to be direct. Next question. Is this only about tech and science? I like Ascension material, but this seems boring. No, it's not only about tech and science. If you're not inspired by what you're seeing week after week with Ben, then you're probably going to be inspired by listening to the audiobook and reading the book, because it'll take you at least the full length of time for the whole course to work through all this material. What Michael has pulled off here is much better than anything I've ever done before with my own readings. It's so much more prophecy that it would appear that this moment in time is the main reason why I was here, was to make sure we got through it and that we get the technology and that we have the guidance to understand that we're going to be okay. So it's not going to be boring, folks. I expect you're going to be crying almost the whole time you listen to Michael talking in the audiobook, honestly, because that's what happens to me. There's so many time loops. It's just amazing. Next question. Will I know how to build a hover car from taking this from engineer types? Absolutely. We're going to go through the Salvatore Pais patents. We're going to talk about the double hull structure. We're going to talk about cold plasma. How do you create cold plasma? What is this charge cluster phenomenon? What is this spherical energy that has gravity and energy both seemingly under its control? How do we make these little spheres? How do we get them to form? I believe the sphere is the whole secret. There's a natural effect, just like gravity or the speed of light, that exists, but we don't normally understand it. We don't normally tap into it. Well, this is going to get you understanding the mechanism by which anti-gravity works. I would expect, based on how specific some of the detail is, that there's all kinds of people who could start to set up experiments at home and begin to replicate some of this charge cluster stuff and a lot of the other stuff. So yes, if you want to tinker around, there's all kinds of stuff that you could do with this information. Okay. Why are you charging for this? Well, this is what you call the rate objection, and anybody who does spiritual work, you're going to come across this. And right now, there is a huge push towards everybody becoming a self-employed entrepreneur, right? Because it's not safe to work a regular job, because you might have to do certain things to keep that job. So I understand that everybody's really hard up for cash right now. I understand that this is a very difficult time financially. I think if it wasn't the times that we're in right now, we probably would have done a lot better on this course than we have. The performance is disappointing. We had a big surge at the beginning, and then it kind of totally leveled off. Okay, so I'm just being honest with you, because we have to co-create the future that we want to have. The higher beings are very big on that you have to give to get something back. So when you look at the friendship case out of Italy, these human ETs that were contacting the Italians in the 1950s and 60s, the humans had to give the ETs whole truckloads filled with things like clothing and fruits and vegetables. They had to pay for the interaction that they were getting. And so it's a basic part of initiation, actually. A financial payment is an offering of the self, showing that you respect that the material has value and that you're willing to return value in kind for the exchange of energy that you're going to get. And I can tell you right now, between all the videos you're going to see and between this book and then it being an ebook as well and how amazing the book is, I think this is great value. Plus, we have listened to you and we do now have a payment plan. So what that means is you could pay $111, get in now, and then pay $111 a month later if there's even an American dollar to use, I don't know, and then $111 after that. So if the if the wheels come off the car, I mean, look, we're going to charge your card, but there might not be a financial system to charge a card with at that point. I don't know. I mean, these prophecies are very intense. The next 2 or 3 months are going to be very intense. A lot of stuff should happen during this time. And we do need your help. Your money is not just going into some narcissistic self-gratification mechanism where we go out and, let's get a new Lamborghini and no. What we're doing is we're making our work better, and we're going to continue doing the best we can for you and for humanity. So we use your money in a proactive way to invest in things that allow us to keep helping you and do a better and better job as time goes on. And that's why I have this great equipment. That's one of the things that the previous launches paid for. If I hadn't have made that money, I would have crappy cameras, right? And it wouldn't look as good. Okay, so what elements of the course are interactive? And again, there's just a couple more of these and we're going to be finished here. But I'm going to leave you some great stuff at the end. So please don't leave just because I'm talking about the course. We're going to do a meditation, some good stuff. What elements of the course are interactive? Well, that gets into a special option that we've never done before, which is a VIP option. If you sign up for the VIP package, then in addition to all the other stuff that you already have, we also have a live Q&A with Ben and me where we're going to take your questions and you can submit them by video. So if you submit your questions by video, you have a real chance that you might actually appear in the show and become a part of history in the making, because everybody's going to want to talk about this once the hover cars actually work, right? Once we have a working prototype, everybody's going to be excited about it. But right for now, we know that we can do it. He's done it before in classified programs, and so we know exactly how to do it, but we have to get there. So that takes money. And the VIP option allows you to pay a little bit more and get something extra where you might be seen in the video and you get to interact with us. We're going to take as many of your questions on that one as we can. When is it going to be? That's probably a function of when Ben and I can get into the same room together. And if things get totally crazy and that becomes impossible, then I guess we'll have to phone him in or something. But, hopefully we'll get together in the same room. Okay, what bonuses are there? That's the next question. Well, we have a lot of bonuses. We talk about 5 different races of ETs on Earth that have actually died here and left behind their remains. And somewhere between that concept and the concept of Archangel Michael being an energy being, we haven't created it yet, but we're going to create some kind of inspired visionary artwork that's extraterrestrial related, and I will actually sign each of these. So you'll get a signed autographed copy mailed to you from me. So you'll get a little bit of my energy and you can put it on the wall if you want. So now we just have to make it good enough that it's worth putting on the wall, and we will. Additionally, the bonuses include, as I said, this Archangel Michael ebook, which I probably am going to end up getting it published as a regular book in the future. But again, even under the most optimistic timeline, you can't get a book out faster than in about 8 months. And these prophecies in some cases are only a few weeks away. So it's going to be a full-length book, full-length audio book, and there's also going to be the meditation where Elizabeth and I get together and talk about, techniques that can activate your higher consciousness, techniques that can increase your spiritual protection, and optimize your ascension process. Because if all this stuff is real, then we really want to be on the cutting edge. We want to know that we're getting the right practices, the right information, we're eating the right food, or right within whatever the beings would be willing to say, the optimal, okay? Okay, so the next question, how is this course different? Because we answered the VIP one already. How is this course different than your previous courses and live streams? Well, it's very different. First of all, there was only one other course where I was interviewing someone else the whole time, and that was Path of Light with Danny and Brinkley. I've never done a course where I actually bring out an insider in this format. So again, you're looking at probably 20 plus hours of great material just with him. I'll have to find out how much it is. I don't know yet. It might be less than that, but it'll be around 15 at least, So how is it different? Well, I'm bringing out an insider who's new, so that's different. You've never heard from him before, We haven't even shared his real name yet, much less the name of our company or anything like that. And we didn't want to until we got financed, and we're very, 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 very close right now, but we're not there yet. So our company is still on fumes at this point, okay? It's precarious. I think it's going to be fine. It looks like we have enough capitalization that will be okay, but still, even right now, isn't it interesting that I got to go right to the last show and hang it out there, and we still don't know if our company is going to be financed by the time the show starts next week. Do you think I'm happy about that? No. Do I have any control over it? No. Okay? But it's very different because, first of all, we have a whole book of time loops from a cosmic consciousness that's speaking to you about your ascension and uses the prophecies as a way of getting your attention, letting you know that you can have faith in this, that it's credible. So it's very, very different. Everything about it is different. So then the last question here, can you tell us the names of some of the extraterrestrial, extradimensional races that you or any of your insiders have been in contact with? No. The answer is no. No. Now, why? Okay, I myself know very few names. I got one name about a certain race, and I know that that's the name for that race. That's what they call themselves. And they're kind of like a helper race, and they go around and help other people, and they're actually, believe it or not, they're like Oompa Loompas. And so the funny part is that, like Pete Peterson, for example, you find out that they don't, the deep state, the government, whatever you want to call it, they don't usually call people by their actual name of like what they call themselves. They come up with these weird shorthand names for them. So if you have an insectoid race, they might call them the bugs. They might call them the crickets. They might call them the mantis people. There's all different types of ETs that are human looking but have white skin that they call tall whites because they're simply tall and white colored. So a tall white, this is one of the things that's caused great confusion, is that they used the term tall whites to describe several different races of ETs. So you might see one story about tall whites and then read about tall whites somewhere else and it's something else. Well, that's because, they basically just did it this way. So reptilians, they might call them reptilians, they might call them reptiloids, they might call them Draco, they might call them Draco. What do they call grays? The only thing I've ever heard grays called is grays, honestly, or little people. I don't recall ever hearing a name for the grays, of an actual name of their race. Yeah, I guess they're from Zeta Reticuli, so you could call them reticulans. Maybe they do that. But there's a certain race that helps our government out quite a bit, and you probably haven't heard about them before. I've never disclosed anything about them before. Part of what I do is not release certain pieces of information to find out who's real and who's not real. But if you're really real, then you definitely know about the little short fat people. Okay? There's little round people, and according to Pete Peterson, when you travel at warp drive for long periods of time, it's going to do weird things to your body. So if you travel through warp drive where you're standing up like this, so let's say this is the ground, that this is the ground you're standing on, this is your body, okay? So your body is standing on the ground now. If you go through the warp drive this way, if your body is standing up and you shoot through the tunnel standing up, okay, you get taller and taller, spindlier and spindlier. Because apparently over time, your body just expands from all this energy that you're going through. So certain races have become tall and wispy looking because of this, because of the style by which they travel through a portal. On the other hand, another way that you could travel through the portal, instead of going into it this way, is you can go into it this way, where you're shooting literally head first through the portal. And you can only really do it one way or the other way. Those are really the only two choices you have, or some variant thereof, I guess, on the tilt angle. Anyway, if you shoot through the tunnels head first, the vortex energy causes your whole body to start compressing. And so what you have is a whole race of people who are about like 3 feet tall, and they're little round balls. They have what appears to be excess body fat. And they have little fat faces, and so actually they're colloquially called the Oompa Loompas because they look like the people in Wizard of Oz. Now I know the name of that group, but I'm not going to share the name because it's classified. But there is a name that they use to identify themselves, and I know what it is. That's really about the only name of any extraterrestrial group that I ever got is the little round people. And they look human. They have beards if they're men. There are apparently people from Earth who have gotten into relationships with them. So there's romantic relationships with these little Oompa Loompa people that have happened. Okay, sexual relationships, by the way. I'm not going to go any farther than that. So that's about as far as I can go with that question, because I honestly don't really know most of the names. There's certain data that is very highly protected. And as I've now gotten a better understanding of classified information, I've been coached on the fact that you don't want to say these things anywhere. You don't even want to say them on Telegram. You know, there's certain words you just don't say. No names, no projects. You know, you can't say these things because there's automated systems, even in stuff that you think is secure, that will hear it and then start a recording going. That's the echelon system. So there's certain things you just don't want to say. And honestly, beyond a certain point, I mean, I don't have a security clearance right now. I don't have a government security clearance, and I might need to get one, but then when I do, I greatly lose freedom. There's much less stuff I can talk about, and they've basically got me at that point. So I still don't have the security clearance. All this stuff that we're doing is technically open source, and we're going to bring it out into the open, make it public, use the Salvatore Pais patents, and create the future that we want to have, which is a future in which we're flying around in these little guys. So again, Ben designed this in 1987, and I guess some of the backstory on this, and again, here's the front view. The backstory on this is that he already knew how to build things that would work by the time he designed this, even though it was only 1987. Like, for example, if you look here, we can see, as I said before, that the wings fold up and down. So if the wings, you see where those two lines are, if those wings fold vertically upwards, then you could fit it into a parking space or into your garage or whatever. And when you look at those engines coming out the back, this is going to use different types of propulsion. Part of what it does is it shoots, I guess, a gravitationally based propulsion out of these emitters at the back that you can see there. It's going to be like a kind of an electrostatic kind of emission. So there will be like a plasma corona around this thing. And then the wings actually use an augmentation. So you augment anti-gravity with air. And that's really fascinating, which I hadn't really thought of. But this is, again, based on tried and true methods that really work. Okay, so it might not seem believable to you. You might not feel that we're ever going to get to the point that you would have a hover car. But this is absolutely real. So let me go in tight again here. So this is it, folks. We're at the point in our planetary journey where the negative has been exposed. They're soon to be defeated. That's going to be the most exciting adventure of all time. Getting to see tribunals, getting to hear the whole thing laid out, going through this mass, cathartic, horrific experience where everybody's like, wow, how could we have been so stupid? How could we have ignored this for so long? How could we have not seen this? You know, you don't win a nuclear war, right? That's so stupid, right? Let's just blow up everybody because their government sucks. No. This is the future. We are now at the tail end of an incredible initiative that has been done by people here, probably guided by Archangel Michael and others, whatever that means, whatever Archangel Michael is. It appears in some of these time loop things that are in the Michael Prophecies book that they know who they're working with, and that there's a lot of people here who have access to this Michael, whatever the heck Michael is, okay? So now, last but not least, I want to leave us with the global peace meditation because, as you saw in the last week time loop, there's some very, very scary prophecies. For example, the La Palma volcano, you know, that's if the top of the volcano comes off, it could be like a bowling ball when it hits the water, and then the strike is the East Coast. So they use the bowling ball analogy at the end of one of the last shows. So that's a very real threat. We talked about how there's signs of artificial heating going on around the volcano, as if someone is using satellite microwave beams to try to make it go off. And we've been hearing about this plan of theirs for many, many, many years. Fulford's been talking about it since 2007. They wanted to blow up La Palma and tsunami the east coast of the United States. I highly doubt that will be allowed to happen. But we definitely want to take precautions and make sure that it doesn't. So without further ado, let's go into this meditation. Okay, so I'd ask you now to close your eyes. Keep both feet flat on the floor. Take a nice deep breath. And breathe in. And hold it for a moment. And then let it go. Visualizing our planet moving through these very stressful changes with grace and ease. Sending our love to all those who are already dealing with very upsetting information and are going to learn things in the future, the near future, that will upset them even more. We send them strength, we send them guidance, protection. We want everyone to be happy as we move through this glorious awakening. For the darkness is not the end. The darkness is what we needed to finally become aware of who we are and what we're really doing here. And as we learn to weed out the negative people in our own lives, as we learn to set healthy boundaries, that it's okay to say no. It's okay to hurt someone's feelings if they're hurting you first. It's okay to draw that line and say, this is where you cannot cross. This is a basic part of being an adult, and it's a basic part of our world as we go into fourth density. We now understand that evil exists and what it's capable of, and we reject all those negative entities that would try to drag us down and make our lives a living hell in any way that they can. We banish those extraterrestrial forces from this solar system, never to return. They are not allowed to feed on humans anymore. They are not allowed to harvest us. They are not allowed to use us for their own evil purposes. As we step forward into this new tomorrow, we have great confidence in the positive success, thanks to Archangel Michael, thanks to what we have now seen and what we will soon be able to read and listen to. This incredible hundreds of pages of downloads from some cosmic intelligence with the most simple message: just be nice, learn to forgive, learn to love one another, and your planet will naturally move through this period of seemingly great distress and seemingly great crisis. We ourselves take the power back. We ourselves step up and do the right thing. We ourselves become the future we wish to see. Instead of asking extraterrestrials to show up and build UFOs for us, we're going to do it ourselves. Let us send our prayers and blessings to all those who may be about to undertake extraordinary orders, wherever they may be, however secret the missions may be. We embrace you, we love you, and we thank you for your service. And we trust that you will be guided and protected by Archangel Michael's sword and shield as you move through your obligations. And we also ask that all those who are responsible for bringing about this epic change in the world, both physical humans and non-terrestrial intelligences, that this all be guided with the utmost of divine precision and perfection, just like we've seen in these prophecies. That no matter what the negative tries to do, no matter what ideas they come up with, nothing will work, and the ascension moves forward exactly as planned. And we co-create a future with hover cars, anti-gravity, free energy, med beds, instant healings, all kinds of wondrous things that are ours to enjoy as part of this divine inheritance, where beings who may right now still want to live behind the scenes and not openly appear just yet are nonetheless giving us the tools of our planetary awakening. And for this, we thank Archangel Michael. We thank all of his associates. We bow in great deference and respect to the Christ consciousness, to the mind of our galaxy, and to the mind of the universe, the one infinite creator. In its omniscience and its intelligence, the perfection of this plan that now reaches its great concrescence here on Earth. And so it is. And now you can wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes, gently open your eyes. We're under 3 hours. There you go. I'm your buddy. I'm your deadbeat dad, but I came through, and so did Michael. We got a whole book of prophecies waiting for you. 6 weeks of amazing content. You're going to have the greatest holiday season ever, and you're going to be totally reunified, knowing that this is all working out, knowing that this is not a disaster as much as it looks that way. It's not. The beings want us to have confidence, and when you get this all downloaded to you, you'll see that future of ascension. You'll see that future of hover cars, and you may even learn the techniques that will help you to levitate as the physics change. And believe me, it's coming. Thank you, everyone, and we will see you at thedisclosure.com. Sign up now. Get on our email list, even if you don't want to do the course, because anything's possible, and I want to stay in touch with you. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.